Chapter 26, Attrition Warfare. It has been smooth sailing for all of this time. Hashirama didn't expect it to go south just when they were about to leave. Half an hour later, the six-clan coalition reached the mine. The six patriarchs stood in the front of the formation, then Nara's patriarch shouted, "Senju patriarch, thank you for your hard work. As a way to show our gratitude, we will let you off with 20% of the ore." Hashirama didn't look like he paid him any attention. He at Masahiko, and the former looked back at him and gave him a little nod. Hashirama moved forward a few steps, then he shouted, "Mokuton World of Trees Wall." The landscape around him suddenly crackled, and roots started to emerge from the ground. The battlefield suddenly turned into a lush forest. "Everyone attack! Big Brother's roots will not attack our people." Tobirama let out a battle cry and charged first, then Senju Sora soon followed. Masahiko didn't charge rashly, instead, he took a few steps backward. The six patriarchs looked at each other, then the Nara patriarch shouted, "Attack!" Then, except for the Heitake patriarch, the other five went to surround Hashirama. It seems that the Heitake's patriarch was looking for Masahiko. Masahiko smiled and waved his hands. "Oi, is it the Heitake patriarch? You and I don't have to participate now. Why don't you accompany this old man to sit here and watch the battle?" The Heitake patriarch looked coldly at Masahiko, then he nodded slowly, and sat down next to Masahiko with a sword in his hand. After a while, the Heitake patriarch said, "You and I will fight, and I will win it in a flash, but it's not because they want me to." Masahiko looked at him and felt irritated, his mouth was twitching on one side, and he almost couldn't restrain the urge to jump and fight him. The Inizuka patriarch saw that and couldn't help but ask Nara, "Don't worry about him, the five of us are enough for the Senju patriarch, and as long as he's keeping that Uzumaki guy away from the battlefield it's fine." Hashirama didn't look serious, he didn't directly attack the five patriarchs. The five patriarchs could sense that something's wrong, thus, they didn't act upon it. They had 3 times the numbers of the Senju. So a long-drawn fight is advantageous for them. However, after half an hour, the battle went out of the 6 patriarchs' expectations. Tobirama, unexpectedly, was facing the strongest clansman of the 6, yet he didn't falter. He wasn't the only one, even Sora Senju also managed to handle most of the elites himself. And lastly, the Senju Shinobi, even when they fight 3 times their number, still managed to maintain the upper hand. Hashirama looked fine for the whole time, even though they managed to hit him once or twice. Something is wrong. The Nara patriarch muttered to himself, if the Senju were this strong, then they should have already united the country of fire long ago. The Nara patriarch didn't see anything out of the ordinary at first. Until he saw a small something attached to the Senju. "Huh? A medical type of kukiyos?" So Nara turned and said, "A bear may patriarch, pay attention to the Uzumaki. Something is wrong about his chakra, it seems only half than before." The Aberme patriarch replied. Of course the Nara patriarch turned to the Heitake patriarch, "Heitake patriarch, quickly finish him. The Uzumaki are using a medical type kukiyos to heal the Senju." "Ah, it's found out." Masahiko then stood up, and so does the Heitake patriarch, who also pulled his sword from its sheath. Heitake patriarch conjunct his blade with chakram, making it more sturdy and sharp. It looked like it can cut anything into 2 halves. "White light chakra saber." Masahiko whispered, "The sword of the famous Konoha's hero, it exists now? What a surprise!" The Heitake patriarch waved his knife to Masahiko, then fell from the top of Masahiko's head. As Masahiko was supposed to be split in 2, poof, Masahiko suddenly turned into a wooden log. Replacement technique? The Heitake patriarch raised his brow. The white light chakra saber emits a streak of white chakra that follows when swung. Since the Heitake patriarch practiced this technique a multitude of times, he reached a level when almost no one could escape his blade. The erratic movement is hard to follow. Masahiko felt he was being locked, but his LV-10 3 bodies technique is not just for show, he at least can fool the Heitake patriarch. "Were a close call." Masahiko sighed with relief. "So what's that nonsense you were saying about finishing me in a flash again?" "Huh?" Masahiko said with a grin on his face. Masahiko teased the Heitake patriarch with Usopp's slice eye from One Piece. And man, did it made the Heitake patriarch furious. He didn't say anything but leaped with his sword pointed to Masahiko. "Honestly, this is just an ordinary blade, but the chakra infusion is what makes this blade very strong. Masahiko didn't make another substitute. He was worried that he's gonna consume his chakra, so he kept his focus on sending chakra to the slug, and prepared his status bar open to add more witness points if things went ugly. Since the Sikotsu forest training and the point distribution, Masahiko's physical has exceeded 300. In terms of pure technique capability, he's already way stronger than Hokage Patriarch. He took his own sword and started a sword fight. Even though he's not as terrifying as the Hokage Patriarch, but his own swordsmanship and 3 body skills proved to be enough. The battle lasted for half an hour. Masahiko chakra is almost depleted, he gradually fell into a disadvantage. Fortunately, the Hokage Patriarch chakra is not big too, so he also was losing a vast amount of his combat strength. At that point, the situation on the other side became apparent, the Senju was riding the wind. They had the absolute upper hand over the other 6 clan forces. The Nara Patriarch shook his head, one wrong move, this is all it took for us to lose, Nara thought, then said, Senju Patriarch, let's stop this fight and avoid any more unnecessary casualties. As for the distribution of the ore, since you seem to be confident fighting the 5 of us, then let this fight decide who win all and lose all. Then he turned around and looked at the other Patriarch, I already decided, does anyone have another opinion? The other 4 noticed the situation on the battlefield. Upon seeing how their clansmen are getting beaten, they didn't oppose it. When he heard this, Hashirama shouted, Tobirama! Take the others to safety, leave the rest to me. Meanwhile, the fight between Masahiko and Hokage's Patriarch was still going. However, it got interrupted by the 2 sides' forces retreating. Therefore, Masahiko and the Patriarch were forced to stop and follow their allies. Masahiko wanted to finish this fight and finally prove himself, but he didn't want to do it against Hashirama's will. Therefore, he recovered the little Katsuyu and left the battlefield, knowing the result. After all, he trusted Hashirama's strength even more than Hashirama himself. At this time, in the center of the battlefield, only Hashirama and the 5 patriarchs remained. The showdown is about to begin. Chapter 27, Clash of Titans. At the heart of the battle, the 2 sides stood in front of each other, and the atmosphere is getting heavier. Hashirama alone is about to face the 5 patriarchs of Nara, Akamike, Inyazuka, Aberame, and Yamanaka. Even though they had the number advantage, they still didn't dare to underestimate Hashirama. The patriarchs looked at each other. The Nara Patriarch gently nodded to the Aberame Patriarch, while the Yamanaka Patriarch was also ready to move. Shadow Imitation Technique. Secret Technique, Locust Swarm. Secret Technique, Mind Disturbance. The 3 patriarchs attacked at the same time and from 3 different directions. The Mokuton world of trees wall is approaching. Against 3 people, Hashirama didn't budge. The spawning roots didn't only act defensively but also offensively against these 3. Facing Hashirama's attack, the 3 patriarchs stepped back and tried to dodge, they didn't dare to face it head-on. The Inyazuka clan patriarch couldn't react at the right time and didn't have a choice but to block it, but alas, the impact was strong enough to make him scream in pain. It is evident that the Inyazuka patriarch has received a heavy blow, even his ninken became defensive and barked at Hashirama. The Inyazuka patriarch patted the head of his ninken, then they combined into a 2-headed dog unleashing the Fang Wolf Fang technique, they jumped and spine extremely fast, and destroyed the roots their vacuum vortex, then rushed toward Hashirama. Without any hesitation, Hashirama weaved a seal. Mokuton, Makujin no Jutsu. Dozens of meters from Hashirama location, Masahiko saw the 10 meters tall wooden golem. Masahiko whispered, "It's my first time seeing this technique, it's really outrageous. This battle should be settled." When he was about to finish his sentence, the expression on his face suddenly stagnated. Hey, hey! This is too exaggerated. Just when Hashirama has finished summoning the golem, the Akimishi Patriarch suddenly pulled out one of the strongest technique that Masahiko has ever seen in his whole life. In an instant, he became 100 meters larger, which made the golem next to him look like a child. Masahiko felt a little bit worried, but he whispered, "Well, maybe the size is just..." Bam! Just before he could even finish his sentence, the Akimichi Patriarch one-shotted the wooden golem. "Oh shit! Does this fat family have always been this strong?" Masahiko shouted out loud. In fact, Masahiko surprised because he didn't think that the Akimichi clan patriarch would be this strong. Because their patriarch in the original, Koji's father, was only a jonin, and none of them could pull out such a strength. Tobirama asked, "Second grandpa, don't you know? In terms of physical capabilities, in the Land of Fire, the Akimichi is the second strongest just after the Kaguya." "Second strongest?" Masahiko has taken aback a little. "Then what about the 8 inner gates user?" "8 inner gates users? What's that, grandfather?" "I also don't know what it is, and where can I learn it?" Masahiko slowly answered. Before Masahiko discovered the leveling system, he already considered learning the 8 inner gates as a mean to receive a burst in power for a short time. He wanted to prove himself even for a short time by using the 8 inner gates. In the 4th Ninja Wars, Madara made a comment about "he's insulting me for not bringing out the red vapor" by these statements. It's assumed that Madara has heard of the Gate of Death before in the Warring States period. However, Masahiko has spent 2 years of his life investigating the existence of the Mato family in the Land of Fire, but he couldn't find them. It's possible that maybe they are unique for each generation, and it's not inherited through blood. Or perhaps, judging by Rock Lee's appearance, this technique is only inherited to those who have thick brows? After he came to this conclusion, Masahiko has even considered putting thick brows and go out. Because he was deeply thinking about the 8 inner gates technique, he almost forgot about the Hashirama vs Akimichi battle, until something shocked him. Suddenly he saw a bigger wooden golem in the sky. It was almost equal to the size of the enlarged Akimichi clan patriarch. Both of them now locked in a duel. The other patriarchs couldn't interfere, the scale of the battle is just too big. Mokuton wood transformation. Hashirama used a hand seal, the wooden golem then grew dozens of hands and grabbed the Akimichi clan patriarch. "Super push!" the Akimichi patriarch shouted. His palms then got more prominent, then he started crushing the golem hands one by one. Secret technique, shadow sewing. Secret technique, destroying fang. Secret technique, poisonous swarm. Seeing an opening that was created by the Akimichi patriarch, the other 3 patriarchs didn't hesitate to attack and finally managed to crush another wood golem. Hashirama tried to spawn another wooden golem, but the Yamanaka patriarch suddenly used secret technique, mind control. Although it would be impossible to control Hashirama, this mind attack was enough to stun Hashirama for a while. Thus he didn't have any choice but to defend against the other patriarch's attacks. Kukiyos no Jutsu, 5 layers Rashomon. Hashirama summoned all of the 5 gates of the Rashomon to block their attacks and provided more than enough time for him to prepare for his new move. The following fights felt like an infinite loop. They attack, defend, attack again, defend again. The 5 patriarchs, now led by the Akimichi patriarch, continued on fighting against Hashirama for another half an hour. At that time, their chakra was already consumed by half, thus, Nara tried to stop the battle with a tactical agreement. "Senjo patriarch, it seems we're evenly matched. I'm afraid this stalemate will be dragging for too long. What about we divide it 50 to 50? The Nara patriarch said. Hashirama didn't answer and standing on the hand of his wooden golem. "Senjo patriarch?" Nara patriarch asked once more. "Not good. Akimichi patriarch, attack him, quickly." The Yamanaka patriarch sensed some strange chakra circulation inside Hashirama's chakra flow. However, it was too late. Hashirama opened his eyes, with a pale blue pattern appears around them, he activated the Sage mode. Sage Art, Gate of the Great God. Several Tori gates fell from the sky, targeting the Akimichi patriarch. The gates pinned the patriarch neck, hands, body, and feet, and firmly suppressed him. He wouldn't be able to escape even if he shrinks back. Not good, everyone, be careful. Even though he was stunned, the Nara patriarch warned the others. However, it's all for vain now that Hashirama has entered the Sage mode. Sage Art would release, drew several thousand hands. Hashirama clasped his hands together and summoned a gigantic Buddha cannon wooden statue with hundreds of arms. Top Buddha transformation. Suddenly, the cannon statue hit the ground with its numerous hands. In the distance, Masahiko saw this and smiled, now it's really settled. Sure enough, after the cannon hundreds arm assault, the battlefield was covered in dust. After a few moments, the dust settled, and a huge crater could be seen. The place right now looked more like a valley. Hashirama closed his Sage mode. And the 5 patriarchs except for the Akimichi were unconscious, the former was still trapped, of course, it would have been ended badly for him if Hashirama wanted to target him with his attacks. Hashirama only took a break for around 5 minutes before Tobirama's return with the army for the support. Now, the 5 patriarchs who were so beat up and their forces were surrounded by Hashirama and his allies, waiting for their inevitable death. Looking at them, Hashirama smiled, and instead of attacking, he said, "Let's go, we're celebrating our victory tonight." Chapter 28, Forging. On the way back, Hashirama didn't say anything. They already sent an envoy to the Sarutobi with the 10% of the mining results. As for how they're gonna divide it among them and the other tribes, he didn't care because it wasn't the Senju's business. Masahiko was unexpectedly happy, not that he cared about the Sarutobi or anything, but he also got rewarded, witness and participate in the side story in Naruto verse, Chakra Blades. +2 witness points. It took him a while, but he remembered that the Chakra Blades are Asuma Sarutobi blade knuckles. It was a surprise that the weapon has got created at this time. If Asuma is the great-grandson of the current Sarutobi patriarch, then the weapon's line of heritage is really long then. During this month, he used 1 point on the mining attribute, then earned 2 points from witnessing this event, which means he made in total 1 point. This month is really full of surprises. I've never expected that the Warring States era really make yield witness points, and there's maybe more. Masahiko is not satisfied with this result, he wants more. After returning to the Senju, Masahiko's favorite part took place there, the celebration. While feasting and drinking to celebrate their victories, Hashirama stood up and said, "This time, we have harvested a great amount of the chakra ore. For those who want to forge a chakra weapon, they can ask Tobirama. Now let's enjoy this party." The Senju clansmen looked at each other, they were reluctant to ask first. Masahiko seeing this, he smiles and stood up, "Tobirama, I need 2 weapons." Tobirama nodded, "It's reserved." Upon seeing that, everyone jumped on Tobirama with their requests. To create a chakra blade, only a small percentage of the conductive ore is needed. The material for such a weapon can't be entirely made by the chakra ore. Steel is still necessary to keep the durability of the blades. So in the process, the chakra ore and the normal metal will be mixed. Thus, this amount of resources is considered significant. On the next day, Masahiko came to the Senju clan workshop. This place was full of materials and blacksmiths who were working on the weapons. It's very rare to find the chakra ore in the Warring States period. So only the most experienced blacksmiths are allowed to work on it. Second Grandpa, currently we're flooded with orders. So I apologize beforehand, we will need to wait before we can get our weapons. Not a problem, wait, Are you also gonna get a weapon? Yes, I need a sword for the Flying Thunder God, Tobirama replied. Masahiko thought, is it the one that was stolen from Konoha? Sword of the Thunder God. Well, if I get involved in this, I will at least get 2 points, but if I... Masahiko turned to Tobirama and said, I don't like waiting, I'll forge it myself. Don't worry, I will forge yours too. Then he weirdly winked. Second Grandpa, you want to forge for yourself? A few days ago, he saw how talented is Masahiko in mining, but he didn't expect him to also know how to forge. Masahiko glanced at him, then said, you will be surprised. Inside the workshop, Masahiko took a hammer then started to hit the iron. Masahiko hit the iron until his face started to drench in sweat. Is this called forging? Obviously, he had no idea about what he actually needs to do. Masahiko kept hitting the metal for half an hour, but the forging property didn't appear in his status bar. Masahiko glanced at the room to find out that some of the blacksmiths were looking at him. He felt embarrassed and said, I haven't done this for many years, my hands become stiff. One of those blacksmiths looked at the metal and thought, stiff or not, doesn't look like blacksmithing. And couldn't even hide the disgraceful look on his face. According to his experience with the mining, the attribute should appear after a few trials, but he was doing this for an hour, and nothing happened. However, he wasn't gonna give up. Masahiko kept trying until it was already dark. Just when the last blacksmith was about to leave the workshop, Masahiko got finally rewarded for his hard work. Blacksmithing LV00. Finally. Masahiko was 2 minutes away from giving up. Fortunately, the blacksmith attribute appeared. Out of his happiness, he added 1 point without thinking. Blacksmithing LV06, 10,000. This is really amazing, I'm feeling years of blacksmithing experience rushing in my mind. Masahiko wanted to start the work on the two swords at once, but he saw the last blacksmith leaving the workshop and closing the door behind him. Moreover, Masahiko was hungry, he just remembered that he didn't eat dinner. After dinner, Masahiko used all the new experiences he got from the blacksmith attribute to find the best way to create the two swords. It turns out that LV6 is the limit of the mortals. Which is a blacksmith master, I think it's also the level of the Senjus blacksmith's masters. Masahiko looked at the remaining WP, and there were 4 points. It's good to leave points for emergencies, but also, there's a chance that after I create the sword of the lightning god, I will gain more witness points. Masahiko gritted his teeth and added 3 points to his blacksmithing attributes. Blacksmithing LV8, 40,000. At this pace, the two swords will be ready tomorrow. Masahiko kept thinking about this until he fell into sleep. On the morning of the next day, Masahiko rushed to the workshop with a high spirit. In just half a day, the two swords were already in Masahiko's hands. Level 8 blacksmithing is sure different. It's not a surprise that he could make them this fast. But when he was trying its balance, he accidentally swung the sword to one of the furnaces and left a crack on it. I'll get into trouble. Crap. Masahiko became anxious and nervousness, then he took the sword and went out quickly. After thinking about it, Masahiko went to the Senju training ground to test the sword. Because this was a chakra blade, Masahiko immediately tried to inject it with his chakra. Oh, Masahiko narrowed his eyes slightly because of the dazzling light that was coming from the blade. Officially, this sword cannot be used for sneak attacks, but maybe I can blind enemies with injecting more chakra in it, Masahiko said to himself. Masahiko measured the blade balance, inspected it for a while, then threw it. Masahiko was about to do a seal, but all of a sudden, his expression changed. In an instant, he replaced positions with his sword. I don't need to do a seal, Masahiko laughed. Well, isn't this the flying thunder technique? Masahiko looked back to the place where he was. Then he shook his head. Well, it's not as convenient as using a sealed paper, but I think maybe it depends on the situation. The blades can't be used as disposable items. It seems that a sealing scroll is more feasible. Making a summoning scroll like the one the 7 legendary swordsmen had for their swords will be better. Tomorrow, I'll show them the work of their second grandfather. Ha ha ha. Chapter 29, Raijin no Ken. Masahiko couldn't wait until the next day, he was too eager to show off in front of Tobirama, so he went to find him. When Masahiko showed the sword to Tobirama, the former was left in awe. Second grandpa, did you learn how to blacksmith? Learn? I can forge weapons from a long time ago. Do you see this blade? I created it myself. Masahiko felt like he's being doubted. Tobirama inspected the swords in Masahiko's hands. It looked like a fine sword, the edge was sharp, it was no different than any normal ninja sword. Tobirama thought about it, then he gave his opinion honestly. Isn't this like any ordinary sword? What? Look at it. Look at it carefully. Masahiko said this angrily, then he injected the sword with his chakra, a dazzling light glowed from the blade. Understand? Masahiko said. Oh ho ho, I cannot see anything now. Tobirama said after he blinked with his eyes showing a helpless smile. Masahiko. After a variety of demonstrations that took Masahiko for about an hour to explain, Tobirama finally had no choice but to submit to Masahiko. Second grandfather, you said you want to make a sword for me. This is fine as a prototype, but now the workshop is already closed. Let's go tomorrow. No, it's still open, there's no way it's closed when a blacksmith needs it the most. We can make it now. Masahiko said with a smile. Tobirama couldn't help but follow Masahiko. But halfway, a shinobi come to them. Tobirama Madano, the patriarch is looking for you. Like having an unexpected savior, Tobirama looked happy, while Masahiko seemed irritated. But drawn by curiosity, Masahiko followed Tobirama to the hall. Why does Hashirama have to call Tobirama at this hour? At the patriarchal hall. Oh, you are here. Hashirama opened the discussion. There was an accident in the workshop. What's wrong, big brother? Tobirama asked in confusion. A furnace has been blown up as if it was struck with a sharp weapon before. Masahiko's expression turned gloomy and looked down. Seeing the change in Masahiko's expression, Hashirama asked, Second grandpa, don't tell me. I was careless, Masahiko said with deep remorse in his tone. Forget it, only 2 master blacksmiths have been slightly injured, but please, pay more attention next time, okay? Hashirama knows that Masahiko didn't have the slightest intention to harm anyone. Well, I'll be more careful next time. I'll treat these 2 blacksmiths masters to a drink. Masahiko tries to wrap this matter, he felt so embarrassed. Seeing Masahiko walking away, Tobirama breathed with a sigh of relief. Big brother, the second grandpa has already promised to make me a sword, Never mind, but for now, let him deal with this first. Hashirama doesn't want to discourage them. The next morning, Masahiko found Tobirama and then dragged him to the workshop. Looking at Masahiko, Tobirama reluctantly asked, "Second grandpa, why do I have to go too? Can't I just wait until my sword is finished? Handing the blade and obtaining it is different." Masahiko glanced at him. "When you make your own weapon, it feels more like a part of you than just a mere blade." "How is that?" Tobirama wanted to know more, but Masahiko got already busy forging his sword. Tobirama didn't have any choice but to watch. Looking at Masahiko in action, gradually, his irritation was gone. Masahiko obviously hasn't forged for more than a week, but something is interesting in his technique. Is this the work of a god? No, I must be crazy. Tobirama muttered to himself. Half a day later, Masahiko finally finished the sword. "This one should be a success. Take it and try it," Masahiko said as he handed the sword to Tobirama. Tobirama tried to swing it a couple of times, he checked its balance, then he tapped on the blade and nodded with satisfaction. "Good, very light, balanced, and easy to use. Now, try to cut something." Masahiko felt like he's getting underrated. "Don't worry, it won't break." Tobirama tried to cut the wooden stick on the side, and easy it got cut into 2 halves. Tobirama nodded, "A good weapon." "Good? This is an artifact." Masahiko took the sword, while his face was turning red, then he injected the blade with lightning attribute chakra. "Okay, this time it will be complete." At that moment, Tobirama felt like he wanted to ask Masahiko about his deal with glowing lights. However, when it was handed again to him, he felt like it can cut through anything. "Come, let's go to the training ground and try the sword." Masahiko saw how Tobirama was hesitating, so he took the initiative. The two come to the first training ground. Masahiko then explained the ability of this sword to Tobirama. This sword can be turned to a light sword by injecting a lightning chakra into it. It can resist most ninjutsu. When in contact with your enemy, it will electrocute them. And it can also make your opponent paralyzed. The blade can also be retracted when not in use. Tobirama tried to retract the blade and was able to do it. It can resist most ninjutsu? Tobirama still couldn't believe this part. "Well, try it." "Raise non," Masahiko said, then attacked Tobirama. Tobirama tried to deflect the raise non using the sword, but it suddenly got split in 2. A-level ninjutsu? And the sword can actually block it. He, see, it can even deflect or block an A-level or higher. Masahiko then threw some more ninjutsu at Tobirama, wind-style wind blade, then earth-style earth dragon bomb. One by one, Masahiko's ninjutsu got deflected, blocked, or even cut by the sword. "Well, Grandpa, enough with the warming up, how about you try me with your strongest ninjutsu?" Tobirama looked confident. "Are you sure?" Masahiko smirked. Masahiko felt a little bit reluctant at first, it didn't seem right. But Tobirama has seen Masahiko's strongest jutsu in the battle against the Kaguya, and he still wants to face it. "Sage art, Raisin Shuriken!" Masahiko shouted, then threw Naruto's signature jutsu. Tobirama, shocked, "Grandpa, are you trying to kill me?" Tobirama tried to deflect it, but because of its concentration of chakra, he barely managed to escape with his life. The Raisin Shuriken destroyed the terrain of the first training ground. But Masahiko was still not satisfied. Sure enough, it's not as strong as Hashirama's true several thousand hands. At that time, the expression on Tobirama's face was as scary as when he tried to kill Sasuke with his finger. "Well, don't be angry." Masahiko smiled and said, "This grandpa wouldn't have used that ninjutsu if he didn't have faith in you. I know you are strong. Thus I showed you my respect in the form of that jutsu. Now, since you look like a satisfied customer, why don't you give it a name then?" Tobirama calmed down and said, "Well, to be honest, yeah, I'm satisfied. Since it works well with lightning, then I'm gonna call it Raijin no Ken." Just the exact words he wanted to hear. A sentence suddenly appears in Masahiko's mind. Witness and completely change the side story of Naruto, the Raijin no Ken sword, plus 2 witness points, *10. Completely change? *10? When he thought about, now there's no chance that this sword is gonna be destroyed by Naruto's Raiznan and Sasuke's Chidori. This has really brought a big profit. Chapter 30, Naughty Boy. The blacksmith workshop has been busy for a whole month, and now it has finally come to an end. In the meantime, Masahiko sweet-talked Tobirama to give him more chakra ore and created another Fuma Shuriken for himself, which will be more than enough for the time being. The Fuma Shuriken was made, and Masahiko needed to start working on the sealing scroll matter. It took a total of half a year to test which wooden bark is the most suitable material to make a scroll to finally found out that the best one was already then one the Senjo had. Accomplish almost nothing for this past 6 months, Masahiko was really eager to start working on the scroll to one more get surprised with the New Year's arrival. He spent the new year with both Tobirama and Hashirama. Masahiko is now younger by 1 year, now he's 30 years old, but in the eyes of others, his appearance is that of a 55-year-old man. In the new year, Masahiko spent his time researching and inventing the sealing scroll. Initially, he thought that it won't be so difficult to make a sealing scroll with his sealing technique. However, the sealing scroll also related to space ninjutsu, and Masahiko didn't know the first thing about it and needed to ask Tobirama for help. The Senjo was frequently going to war, and with Tobirama usually leading the expedition or the strike team. 1, 2, 3 years has passed by. It took him 3 years to see those Chinese characters before him. Masahiko almost felt like crying. Witness and cause minor change to the side story of Naruto World, sealing scroll, plus 2 witness points, *2. I spent 3 goddamn years to only obtain 4 witness points. Minor change? Does this affect the original creator or something? Damn. Who is the original creator of this scroll? Is he so powerful? Bet he's so powerful, he could match our Fuinjutsu in making this crappy scroll. But luckily, I have other gains. My Fuinjutsu already increased by 1 level, which is equivalent to spending 20 witness points. In the end, Masahiko didn't have a choice but to comfort himself. "Grandpa, Kenji has come to see you." A young childish voice surprised Masahiko and made him jump from his chair, and all of a sudden, a series of sad flashbacks flashed in his mind. Masahiko's face suddenly went dark. No. He came out. Senjo Kenji is the child of Hashirama and Mito, and also the future father of the Godame Hokage, Tsunade. In the past 3 years, the person Masahiko who was very eager to meet has become his bane of existence. Perhaps he inherited Hashirama's genes a little bit too much. This child seems to be lack of affection since he was little. In the past 3 years, the sealing scroll that Masahiko trying to make was torn 5 times by Kenji. Masahiko's beard was either cut or burnt 4 times, and he also secretly replaced Masahiko's scroll material 3 times. Kenji-kun, grandpa is coming for his hug. Masahiko quickly collected the newly completed scroll and hid it, then he welcomed the boy. Let me hold my beautiful nephew. Masahiko tried to contain the situation by holding Kenji. Oh, grandpa's beard. Knowing what will happen next, he quickly handed Kenji back to Mito. Second, grandpa, are you still busy making the scroll? Do you need my help? Mito smiled and offered her help. No need, I just finished it. I was about to report the good news to Hashirama and Tobirama. Masahiko explained with a hint of cheerfulness in his face. Oh! Congratulations, grandpa! Hashirama said that he will be in the hall now. And it seems that Tobirama is still outside since yesterday. Huh? Going out again? Which small clan is not stable this time? In the past 3 years, after that secret meeting between Hashiram and Madara, the Uchiha and the Senju didn't fight again. It seems that Madara realized that their power is no longer equal, and a full-blown conflict will be risky. So although the fighting has continued, it was only about beating the small unsettled clans. It's not small clan, grandpa. It seems to be that the daimyo of the Land of Fire has called. Mito replied. The daimyo? Masahiko is puzzled. This world is not only habited by shinobi only. The Land of Fire is comprised of civilians as its main population, and only a fractal percent are shinobis. While the civilians are more than 10 million, the shinobis are only a few thousand, and this large population is governed by the daimyo. Some clans can have a bad tendency, like when they start to fight and kill another clan. This can affect the economy. Therefore, the Land of Fire separates each clan and recognizes them without interfering in their affairs. The shinobis are only asked to maintain that superficial respect, and that's the case, especially for those big clans like the Senju and the Uchiha. But for the daimyo to call for the Senju and for what specific reason is unknown. Masahiko felt confused. Then, Masahiko, Kenji, and Mito went to the patriarchal hall. Ota-sama. The little boy shouted. Masahiko's face become green. He's surprised by this little demon's ability to become so polite in front of his father, as if the only person who picks up on is Masahiko. No wonder Mito always smiles proudly in the back. Her child has a noble class manner in front of Hashirama. Grandpa, here you are, any new about the sealing scroll? Hashirama said. It's finished. After I write the material and the procedure on how to make it, it can be mass-produced. Masahiko said with a smile. Great. Then in the future, we don't have to worry about supplies and logistics, Hashirama smiled. Hashirama, what about Tobirama? Masahiko asked. Oh, he's going to the Land of Fire capital. It seems something is happening there. Don't worry about him, Grandpa. Hashirama said indifferently. After a brief conversation with Hashirama, Masahiko went back to his room and began to record the procedure on how to manufacture the sealing scroll, and also made a summoning scroll for his 2 new Fuma shuriken. This busy period will come to an end. It's been nearly 4 years since Masahiko left the Uzumaki. He's been thinking to rest for a few days, bid farewell to Hashirama, then return to the Uzumaki. Unexpectedly, Hashirama summoned Masahiko to the assembly hall on that night. Second Grandpa, I just got a letter from Tobirama, and they require the presence of a lot of ninja clans, such as the Uchiha, Nara, Aberame, Akimichi, Yamanaka. These clans has already arrived there. Tobirama is afraid that he won't be able to handle it alone. I'm thinking about sending you. I am going? Masahiko felt confused. You still have a lot of people among the Senju clansmen, why it should be me? The Uchiha are represented by Izuna, Madara didn't go. And I am not in good standing with the Land of Fire government. Hashirama felt embarrassed to admit this. As for letting you go, it's Tobirama's personal request, Grandpa. Tobirama said, although you sometimes sound weird, I mean, sometimes your way of thinking is out of the box. Well, that's mean. I just sometimes have some crooked ideas, Masahiko said bitterly. Sigh. Well, I will go. I will do my best for the sake of the clan. But after this I will bid my farewell. It's been 4 years since I left home, it's time for me to go back. And I hope the next time I meet your family, you'll do something about this little bear behavior. Note, bear child, internet language, bear children have a derogatory meaning. This name comes from the north and refers to those annoying children. The ignorance of the bear child is often the result of the parents' excessive indulgence. Okay, I'm sorry to trouble you. Wait, when did Kenji was naughty? Huh? I almost jumped off a bridge because of his harassment. Masahiko turned away and left the hall. Hashirama was left with black question marks on his face. Chapter 31, The Nation of Fire. At the capital of the Fire Nation. After 1 day of traveling, Masahiko finally reached the center of the Fire Nation. Located on its center is the famous capital of the Fire Nation. As the heart of the economy of the Fire Nation, the capital indeed looks lively. The low-rise building and family pavilion can be seen densely packed the city. Although it's been 58 years since Masahiko crossed to this world, Masahiko never even once visited a relatively advanced metropolitan area in this world. At least now, his long desire to visit this world metro city is finally reached. There are no high-rise buildings like in the 21st century. The architecture here has more local and traditional flavor. Masahiko took a walk on the streets in the downtown area, and he could hear the shouting and hawking sounds of some vendors. The handmade pottery from the Wind Nation, the clothes from the Water Nation, stone carving from the Earth Nation, and many more. There are a lot of merchants traveling to this city while bringing goods from all over the world. It's really amazing. Even in this war-torn era, just to make ends meet, people will travel here. It's surely true that even at this time, business is a viable alternative than fighting. Suddenly, Masahiko heard something familiar, "Don't miss our latest product. The first in the whole country, only in our shop you can find." Masahiko surprised a little, he slightly nodded his head, a familiar marketing method. He walked closer to the salesman. And the salesman was surrounded by a big crowd. He tried to dive closer to the commotion. Held by the salesman is a headset. Masahiko didn't know this kind of thing might appear here in this world. But when he looks around the crowds, from their reaction, it seems that this thing is not unfamiliar. Well, this world, after all, is written in a contemporary era, it does have a stroke of modernism in it. So I think things like this may be normal. The salesman continued his talk, "This is the latest radio headset developed by my store. Just wear this, and it doesn't matter how far apart you and your partner are, you still can communicate through this. A lot of shinobi are using this now. This radio headset can be used in battlefields to relay command without any delay. Only for 100 million ryo, quickly. The stock is limited." Masahiko shocked. This thing he wasn't sure, but it seems this technology is still a rare commodity in this era, distance communication, but again for 100 million? In Naruto's story, the bounty on Asuma Sarutobi's head was 30 million ryo. And at that time, the 30 million ryo is comparable with the present 3 million ryo. As for 100 million ryo, it's the same as the entire saving of a small clan. Sure enough, a lot of people were curious about this, but no one wants to use their cash on this. Only fools will buy it, Masahiko thought, but suddenly he hears a familiar voice. "I'll buy it." Masahiko looked at the source of the voice and saw the Nara patriarch who was about to buy the radio headset. When he saw his acquaintance, Masahiko was thrilled. "Nara patriarch. Ha ha ha, we meet again." When the Nara patriarch saw Masahiko, he suddenly remembered the battle a few years ago at the Sarutobi mine. They lost thanks to Masahiko's summon technique. This made his face suddenly turned pale and wanted to leave immediately. Masahiko couldn't help but laugh more and tried to stop him. "Why the rush? Nara patriarch, it's not easy to see some acquaintance in the capital. I just thought that this radio headset is too expensive and only a fool will buy it. I mean, your family is wealthy." The Nara patriarch was helpless. If he understands right, Masahiko was about to call him a fool. He reluctantly said, "Oh yeah, well, probably he didn't seem to care. Is Nara patriarch also summoned here by the government?" "The government? No, I'm here just for shopping," Nara patriarch said. "Oh, is that so?" Masahiko could feel that the Nara patriarch is trying to hide something. "You want to buy this? Why not just communicate using the Yamanaka technique?" The Nara's expression suddenly changed. He didn't expect Masahiko to know about this. "Don't be nervous, I have lived for 58 years. Of course, I've heard things." Masahiko tried to explain. The Nara patriarch nodded, reluctantly tried to believe Masahiko's words, and turned away. Oh, this time Masahiko didn't stop the Nara patriarch, he laughed then walked away. Teasing a smart person is more fun than teasing Hashirama, Masahiko thought. After that, Masahiko lost his interest in continuing his sightseeing. After asking a few people, he finally arrived at the daimyo estate. After explaining his intentions to the guards, he was taken to the Senjus room. "Second grandpa, you've come? How was your trip?" Tobirama greeted Masahiko as he entered the room. "Well, smooth. I guess you're now stuck with my crooked ideas." Masahiko glanced aside. Tobirama's face looked stiff, he was cursing his older brother for running his mouth in his heart. "How could you say that? You always helped us these past years. I couldn't be thankful enough." "Well, apology accepted. What's going on this time?" Masahiko said while Tobirama thought, "I didn't make an apology. It's not clear yet, because the attendees to the meeting didn't come yet. But as time passed by, a lot of clans' representatives gathered here. The big clans and the small families are coming from all over the country. I think something big is about to happen," Tobirama explained. "Everyone?" Masahiko asked awkwardly. Tobirama smiled, and he said, "Yes, they also come. In fact, because of our in-law relationship, their room is placed next to us." "What? I have to go and see my nephew then," Masahiko said with a hint of guilt. Masahiko walked to the next room with the Uzumaki name written on it, then knocked on the door. The door opened, and it was the Uzumaki patriarch who opened the door. The moment he saw Masahiko, the patriarch froze for a while, then he smiled and said, "Second uncle. Long time no see, you still haven't changed. Wow, you are a lot older." Although he tried to look like a 55-year-old man, Masahiko couldn't be honest with himself, and he maintained the 48-years-old appearance with some changes. The same thing didn't happen with the patriarch. Now he's in his 40s, and the stress that he was dealing with seemed to affect his body too. He looked even older than Masahiko. Masahiko saw this and felt a little bit embarrassed. In order to obtain more witness points, he stayed at the Senju. Even so, he should have visited more and helped his nephew. "Patriarch, after this thing is settled, I will go back to the Uzumaki with you." The Uzumaki patriarch got filled with joy. "With you around, it'll be easier. Over these years, the second and third elder has also retired, and you weren't in the village. Only my second and third brother left. It's become very hard to guard and manage the village." The people seemed dissatisfied, thinking that I've become a dictator. Masahiko rolled his eyes and said, "Don't worry, it won't be the same when I go back. I'll go back and teach the younger ninja. As for other things, I will be counting on you." "Yes, uncle, as long as you go back." The Uzumaki patriarch nodded. "Well, I'll be next door. I'm here to help Tobirama with the Land of Fire matters, so don't come and look for me." Masahiko then went back to the Senju's room. The Uzumaki patriarch sighed, "This second uncle is still the same." Chapter 32, 108 Shinobis. In the early morning of the following day, Masahiko followed Tobirama to see the daimyo of the Fire Nation. Fortunately, the daimyo is not such a sissy. He showed himself in the meeting. At the same time, Masahiko and Tobirama met his infamous rival Uchiha Izuna and Uchiha Senso. The current patriarch, Madara, of course, couldn't come. Uchiha Izuna looked at Masahiko and sneered, "Has the Uzumaki really become the dogs of Senju? This old man is following you even to this place?" "Old man? Are you sure he's not older than me?" Masahiko smiled and said, relying on his forever 48-years-old face. Masahiko could notice the look of Uchiha Senso filled with a hint of despise. "Elder, ignore him, no ways he's younger than you." Izuna saw how the elder looked embarrassed and tried to comfort him. Alas, all that has been said. In short, Masahiko felt even happier when the elder's face turned red. Cough. With a single cough, daimyo at the center of the stage attracted everyone's attention, and the mumble stopped. Seeing the silence, the daimyo said, "This time, I summoned all of you here today, because an assassination attempt on me by a shinobi, that took place a few days ago. After the death of Santaro, none of my guards can make me feel safe again. Of course, you weren't called here because I suspect that the assassins were sent by you, but because I feel my safety is threatened. I hope that the major clans can send a few elite shinobis to protect me and form a group of 12 guards. And of course, I will reward anyone who participates, so what do you think?" Several people in the audience looked at each other but didn't say anything. Major clans acknowledge the status of the daimyo and understand his current situation. First, because the daimyo has managed to improve the economic situation of the Fire Nation, thus making this country prosperous. Of course, the shinobi's income also increased. Second, because the daimyo don't really have enough fighting power compared to the shinobi's clans, and that's the main reason why they didn't have a problem with him. The daimyo requested to form a 12 guardian shinobi to protect him. It's like a form of military employment directly from the daimyo, not the states. It's not like a conscript from the states, but because this is a request from the daimyo himself, regarding his security issues, they couldn't refuse. This may seem like a simple matter, but by becoming the shadow protector of the daimyo, this group will be authorized to do a clandestine operation, and they can even act on behalf of the Fire Nation. So the formation of this group can shift the balance between the clans. This is why this matter is not as light as it seems. The Uchiha Senso raised his hand, then stood up. "Daimyo, I apologize, but we will have to think about this matter further with our clan." Tobirama winked at Masahiko. Of course, he also was gonna object this, and as the representatives of the team, Tobirama couldn't make the decision. So he depended on Masahiko to work things out. Masahiko stood up and smiled at the daimyo, and then he said, "Oh daimyo, for your safety, it's understandable for you to form a 12 guardian ninja. But the assassin might not only target you alone, your wife and children are also threatened. So for the safety of the nation and the government, how can 12 people be able to do it? I think it would be more reasonable to form 108 guardian shinobis instead. The Uchiha duo looked at Masahiko with wide eyes, they seemed very surprised. At that moment, Masahiko didn't dare to turn around to look at Tobirama. Then Masahiko continued to defend his argument. If the 108 shinobi is to be found, then it will greatly change the story, thus, he will yield numerous witness points. On the podium, the daimyo smiled and said, "Oh, thank you for your suggestion, I will consider the idea of forming a tram of 108 shinobi further." Several representatives bid farewell to the daimyo and returned to their room. While walking to his room, Masahiko couldn't bring himself to look at Tobirama. Besides, initially, he was sent to assist him, but now the result was out of everyone's expectation. "Tobirama, Second Grandpa, your solution is perfect." Masahiko tries to apologize to Tobirama, but Tobirama interrupted him out of excitement. Masahiko is confused, and he doesn't know what to say. If the daimyo formed the Guardian 12, then the smaller clans who have been called could join, their position will rise, and the other powerful family, surely won't be able to refuse. But if he wants to form a team of 108 shinobis, all of the clans will end up refusing, and the whole proposal will be in vain. Sure enough, bringing you was the right choice. At the moment, Masahiko has frozen in his place and felt like he was gonna faint out. He didn't think that his words will have an in-depth evaluation like that. Yes, Masahiko reacted, exactly what I thought. I didn't expect you to uncover it this soon. Masahiko played along, he estimated that the witness points won't be that much anyway. It's just like what Tobirama expected, the daimyo have summoned the Senju and the Uchiha, and other the clans again. Not to discuss the forming of 12 guardian ninja, but to talk about the forming of the team of 108 shinobis. Sure enough, even the smaller family who could benefit from this has refused the daimyo's proposal. In a room, on the other side of the daimyo estate, the Inoshikacho clans were gathering there. The Yamanaka looked very concerned about this, and said, "What should we do about the daimyo now? If the 108 shinobi team is gonna be formed, with this kind of power, I'm afraid they will attack us at some point." As he said, he looked at the other two patriarchs. "The daimyo is quite the clever man. I heard he recalled the Senju and the Uchiha to meet with them privately. If the Uchiha gets a good chance, it might be the end for us." The Nara patriarch shook his head, "Not necessarily the Uchiha, maybe it's the Senju." When he said this, he remembered Masahiko's slender face. "Akimichi, what do you think?" The two looked at the Akimichi patriarch at the same time. I think the buffet by the daimyo yesterday was delicious. Maybe I should let my family's chefs come to learn it." The other two could only sigh and shake their heads. They ignored the Akimichi patriarch and continued their discussion. The other clans came to the same decision as Inoshikacho and objected the daimyo's proposal, but in the end, he was still the daimyo, and they needed to come out with a proper way to refuse this proposal. The next day, the daimyo summoned the Senju and the Uchiha again. Compared to yesterday, the daimyo face seems displeased, especially upon seeing Masahiko. Masahiko wanted to prove he's innocent, and swear that he's on the daimyo's side. Before the daimyo could say anything, Masahiko opened the conversation. "The 108 stars of destiny that I proposed yesterday, I feel like I didn't think that through. And the daimyo don't really need that much of people. The recruitment, maintenance, and how to make sure they work well together will also make an issue. I still think that 12 are not enough, how about 24? The daimyo somehow was getting calmer. He let out a sigh and said, "I didn't think about it too yesterday. I don't even think I can afford to pay the cost of this employment. As for the specific number, I think I have to consider the needs first. I will hold a banquet in the evening to gather you all together, and we will discuss it again later." Masahiko and the others nodded and bid farewell to the daimyo. While walking, Tobirama said to Masahiko, "The daimyo is indeed a powerful man, he will rethink his proposal, and settle this matter. But thanks to you, things worked out for both sides, Grandpa." "Ha, ha, ha." Masahiko laughed proudly. Chapter 33, The Settling of the Dust. In the evening, the daimyo household held a grand banquet. The daimyo, his wife, and his 3 children attended the banquet. There's also the shinobi clans. When Masahiko looked around, he could recognize a lot of people. The Senju, Uchiha, and the Uzumaki didn't say anything about their previous meeting with the daimyo. They remained quiet in the banquet. From the 6 clans that fought the Sarutobi and Senju more than 3 years ago, only 5 attended the banquet. The Hokage clan patriarch didn't come. There are also some minor clans attending the banquet, but Masahiko only familiar with the Sarutobi clan patriarch. The person from Shimura clan who stood next to the Sarutobi patriarch might be the Shimura clan patriarch. The patriarch from the Fuma, Yamashiro, and the Heiate clan also attend the banquet. However, Masahiko's eyes were fixed on a slightly familiar guy from a particular clan. That is it, the Kurama clan? So they're the clan in the anime, right? I don't think they exist. They've been mentioned in Manage. These people are not canon, so am I in the anime world? A spin-off? Masahiko was confused. There are some differences between the anime and the manga. Crap, I hope that there will be no special awakening for their members. If that happens, then there will be troubles. I'm not ready to engage in a fight with someone who has a goddamn Aizen-like abilities. Masahiko thought deeply about this matter. The daimyo then called the maid to serve the food. The maid put the plate of dishes on the table. Seeing this, Masahiko abandoned his thought. The food was on the table, and nothing in the world mattered to him more than food. The daimyo sure lives up to his name. This feast, so this is the feast in this world, huh? What a grander sight! Masahiko doesn't really know about the feast in this other world, but from the sight of it, he's impressed. And if not for the trouble of protecting the daimyo, he would want to stay in this place. Masahiko didn't really mind about Tobirama sitting with him on the same table. Then he starts to eat ravenously. The daimyo seemed to have started a speech about something. But Masahiko paid no attention to it. Finally, when he was already full, he looks at the daimyo and heard him saying, "That's it. Thank you for your attention, and please enjoy the feast." Masahiko took a break. He ate for 20 minutes, and when he finished sating his hunger, the daimyo's speech was over. There's nothing much to say regarding that matter. Seeing how everyone started eating, Masahiko, who is already full, felt bored. He took a cup of tea and started observing other people's ways of eating. There are a lot of types of people here, according to his observation. The mysterious nature, such as the Aberme patriarch. The gallant type, like the Akimichi patriarch. And the flat model, such as Tobirama and the Queen Drama. Yes, he was talking about Uchiha Izuna. Slurp. Masahiko put one leg on the other and sipped his tea. All the patriarchs were glaring at Masahiko. The patriarchs didn't seem too comfortable being watched when they're having dinner. Masahiko couldn't help but laugh deep inside. "Nothing, nothing, please continue your dinner, gentlemen, I'm only peacefully drinking my tea here." Half an hour later, except for the Akimichi patriarch, everybody was full already. The Nara patriarch stood up and said, "Oh great daimyo, thank you for your hospitality, may we know your proposal this time?" "There's no need to hurry, we'll continue our discussion after the Akimichi patriarch finishes his dinner," the daimyo said. The crowd was left in silence again, except for the sound of the Akimichi patriarch's chewing. Half an hour has passed, the Akimichi patriarch hasn't finished eating yet. The daimyo let out a long sigh, then shook his head, and opened the talk. "Well, I think maybe we can begin our talks now. The Akimichi patriarch can continue to eat, you don't need to worry about it. Now that everyone is gathered here, I believe you must be asking why I've called you here. And yes, it's still about my personal protection squad that I want to assemble. I know maybe 108 shinobis is too much, and everyone in here knows that I've initially wanted to form a 12 guardian shinobi. May 12th be enough to protect me, but I'm afraid they won't be able to protect my wife and children too. So after a long of thinking and consideration, I decided that the most efficient way is to form a 36 guardian shinobi to protect me, my family, and the entire palace." Masahiko listened to the daimyo's speech, and somehow he wants to laugh, but he held it. Masahiko's previous proposal made the daimyo have huge ambitions. He's no longer satisfied with 12 shinobis, but to make things agreeable and reasonable for the time being, he made it 36. The attendants looked at each other. Tobirama stood up and said, "Oh daimyo, sending someone to protect you is our duty." Upon seeing that Izuna didn't just sit idly, he stood up and then said, "Daimyo, there are 15 clans and families in total. If each clan send one person, then you could have at least 15 people. The Uchiha will send 2 shinobi, then the number will increase to 16. I think it's enough to protect you. Daimyo, the Senju will also send 2 people. Tobirama immediately said. The daimyo looked happy with this development, looking at the other patriarchs, hoping that someone will stand up like the Senju and Uchiha. However, in this period, when the Uchiha and the Senju already decide something, nobody dares to refuse. The daimyo sigh in relief, even though it's not what he wanted, but having 17 people is way better than 12. Hyoga Patriarch, please come out. Tobirama tried to squint his eyes to get a better look, and much to his surprise, the Patriarch of the Hyoga has come from the room behind. Tobirama was surprised that he didn't participate in the first place. It looks he was here the whole time. Izuna stared at him coldly, his eyes seemed full of hatred. He kept looking at him for a while, but the Hyoga Patriarch doesn't seem care. The tension between these two families is still far from being over. The Hyoga Patriarch didn't say anything to Izuna, he greeted the daimyo and said, "Oh great daimyo, it's an honor to serve you. Your safety is the duty of the Land of Fire Shinobis. The Hyoga will send 3 of our top-ranking shinobi to join your guard force." 3. Tobirama is surprised, and for him, this is a little bit unpleasant. As an ally, he should have consulted with him first. It didn't make much sense for Tobirama. 10 years ago, the Uchiha almost destroyed the entire Hyuga clan, and now they only have one patriarch and a bunch of retired elders. Maybe the Hyuga did this to keep a good relationship with the daimyo. Evidently, it's useless to escape from the daimyo sight. If the Hyuga didn't participate in this guard force, then who knows how's their relation with the daimyo will be in the next few years. Now, the guard force has 20 peoples participating, but somehow the Uchiha and the Senju feels something is off. The Uzumaki clan patriarch stood up. "My clan suffered a heavy loss in our conflict against the Kagaya clan a few years ago. It's a heavy blow to our ranks. So we would like to recover, for now, thus, we apologize from the depth of our heart, O daimyo, we can't send people to join the guardian force." In addition, the Kurama clan also refused to send people. In the face of these excuses, the daimyo didn't try to force them but said, "Thank you for your support. As a result of this, I announce that the 18 Guardian team has officially been formed. I hope you will choose the right people and send them as soon as possible. And I want to thank the Hyuga clan for sending the most people." Masahiko quite pleased with the result, although his plan to make the 108 Stars of Destiny team is not realized. Changing the number of the Guardian Ninja from 12 to 20 is good enough to change the story and give him witness points. The dust has finally settled. People from all clans returned back to their rooms, and tomorrow morning, they were going back to their clans. After the event, Tobirama and Masahiko were preparing to go back to their rooms too. Suddenly Tobirama asked Masahiko. "Second grandpa, have you finished the sealing scroll?" Masahiko answered, "Well, I have, didn't anyone tell you?" Tobirama shocked, "Nobody told me anything." Masahiko then replied, "Then, you know now anyway, because I already finished most of my affairs with the Senju, I will go back to the Uzumaki. Maybe it'll be a few years when we will meet again. Also, if you ever developed any new ninjutsu, you have to tell me. Remember, your grandpa will always be there for you." Chapter 34, The Maiden. After the clan's summit, Masahiko followed the Uzumaki clan patriarch back to the Uzumaki village. "Nephew, are there any promising young geniuses in our clan recently? After I'm going back, I think I will take some disciples under my wing," Masahiko said while they walk home. "Well, maybe there are few, I don't know much. You can go back and gather all the children under 12 years old, and pick whoever you want." Masahiko rolled his eyes, this patriarch didn't give him a clear answer. "Pick whoever you want? What are they? Vegetables? Well, if you have any recommendations, just tell me. I'm looking for the talented one, even if they are not that strong, it's okay, I'm looking for potential." After saying this, Masahiko suddenly remembered something. Why hasn't the witness points for the 18 Guardian transferred yet? Is it necessary to be formally established with its entire members first? I really hope the clans will quickly send their people to join the Guardian force. After one day of running, Masahiko and the Uzumaki patriarch finally arrived at the Uzumaki clan village. Masahiko finally saw his hometown again after 4 long years. After these 4 years, a lot of things have changed, Masahiko said. A lot of new buildings were added to the village. The population has doubled in these past years since the last time you were here, thus, new houses were built. The patriarch explained to Masahiko when he saw Masahiko's puzzled face. Masahiko nodded. The patriarch looked at Masahiko and said, "Well, I've been out for 5 days, I should be going back soon to deal with the clan's affairs. I'm going back to my house. You know your way from here, right?" Upon saying that, the patriarch turned and left. Masahiko took a walk to his home, which he didn't see for 4 years. Along the road, he saw both familiar and unfamiliar faces. Those who knew him greeted him. He arrived at his home when he opened the door. He was surprised that it was clean and tidy. It seems that the patriarch took care of the cleaning for this whole time. After having a quick look, Masahiko went to his bedroom and laid on his bed. "Since I've obtained my first witness point, I have been busy myself searching for more. I spend most of my time doing just that. But is it really worth it? There should be a lot of things to witness later. Was it worth it to stay for all of these years at the Senju?" Contemplating now, he sees himself as a man who always in pursuit of strength. His sole purpose is just to become stronger. "With my current strength, except for the twin gods of Shinobi, there's nothing that can threaten my life in this era. Maybe I should slow down a little bit. The system is not going anywhere, it's mine. For a few years ahead, I can clear my mind, wait for the establishment of Konoha, and train some disciples, I think. Just think of it as my pension." Masahiko suppressed these feelings and relaxed his body. He was so tired that he only took out his sweat-drenched clothes off and slept with nothing but his undies. In the early morning of the next day, Masahiko was awakened by the sound of the door being opened then closed again. "What the hell is this? Is the patriarch visiting me this early? Wait. This chakra is not his." The one who opened the door was a girl with dark grey eyes, holding a small bucket of water and a few rags on the other hand. When she saw Masahiko, the girl got stunned for a moment, then she threw the water at Masahiko. "Pervert!" Masahiko got splashed by the cold water, but he couldn't help but smile helplessly. "It's not my fault that you sneaked in my house and found me naked." About half an hour later, at the Patriarch Hall. "Grandpa, I didn't know you were back, I'm sorry." The girl repeatedly bowed and apologized to Masahiko. "Okay Nanako, Grandpa Masahiko is not angry with you. You can go and continue your work." The patriarch comforts the girl and sent her away. When the girl went out, Masahiko stared at the patriarch. What happened this morning is surely left Masahiko with some question. The patriarch explained, "Nanako is an orphan. She's not talented in ninjutsu, at the age of 11 she was still a genin, so I asked her to do some chores, including cleaning some houses." Orphaned, Masahiko said faintly. In the Warring States period, there aren't actually a lot of orphans. There's a lot of deaths and injuries, and the people who participate in wars know about these risks. They usually have relatives to take care of their children if anything happens. Usually, people have 3 to 5 brothers. The families are huge, which also means that they have a lot of uncles. So if their fathers die, their uncles will take care of them. This is like an unwritten rule in the Warring States. Thus even if one's parents are dead, usually another member of their family will take care of them. So she's not very talented in ninjutsu. That's why she's helping with the chores, huh? Masahiko still left questioned, doesn't she have any other relatives in the Uzumaki, an uncle or an auntie? The patriarch smiled and said, her uncle is Uzumaki Murasaki. As for her parents, they died when she was still a child, she used to live with her grandparents. But they passed away 2 years ago. Murasaki has also died in the war. I don't want her to be completely abandoned, so I took her under my care. Masahiko nodded, I understand, but as your second daughter, her character is not gentle. She poured a bucket of water on me, it's very different with Mito. The patriarch smiled bitterly, well, her natural character is quite rough, I want to teach her to be gentle, but... Masahiko shook his head, nah, this is good as an orphan, she has to be able to protect herself. Ah, don't forget to gather some of our clan youngsters for me to choose as disciples. Masahiko stopped for a moment, then continued, Nanako can join too. Hearing this, the patriarch seems very pleased, thank you, uncle. Masahiko then walked away and waved his hand. I woke up by a bucket of cold water this morning. I want to clean myself properly. At Masahiko house. It seemed like a déjà vu after he entered the house. Nanako opened the door holding a bucket of water and a few rags on her hand. Masahiko instinctively tried to dodge, but suddenly Nanako bowed to Masahiko, "Adogza," and apologizes. "Oh, no water this time, ahem, I already talked to the patriarch, and he forgave you, so what are you doing here?" Masahiko asked Nanako. "Grandpa Masahiko, I come to clean the house." Nanako stood up and picked her cleaning tools. "Oh, okay, it's fine, I'm gonna do it myself. The patriarch seems to be looking for you, so you better go to him." Masahiko replied. "Ah, I understand." She then turned and ran out again. Masahiko looked at the cute little sheets on the bed and the cleaning tools that Nanako left. He completely lost motivation to do the chore. No, don't sleep now. I better have something to eat and then clean myself. Oh my dear sheets, I gotta hurry and dry them soon." Chapter 35, Choosing Disciples. In the afternoon, at the Patriarch Hall. Masahiko stood in front of 11 children. And looked like he wasn't pleased. "I just finished drying my sheets with a variety of wind and fire release jutsu just when I was about to sleep, the Patriarch summoned me here." Masahiko thought. Besides Nanako, there are 10 other children. 8 boys, 2 girls. The oldest is around 10 years old, while the youngest is 8 years old. The Patriarch looked at Masahiko and asked, "Uncle, are you dissatisfied with these children?" Masahiko came back to reality at that moment and looked carefully at the face of these young kids. The youngest girl's eyes are a little bit wet. "Not really. It's just I have a unique selection method. And 11 is too much, so maybe I will eliminate some of them." The Patriarch sighed with relief. "Oh, it's not a problem, testing them is normal things to choose the right disciples." In this case Masahiko turned to the children. "There will be 3 tests tomorrow, the first is gonna be a physical test. Now go home and prepare yourself, and tomorrow meet me again at the 4th training ground." The children then bowed to Masahiko, then left. Everyone except Nanako, she stayed. "Grandpa Masahiko, Nanako's talent is not that good, tomorrow Don't worry about it, I will be the one to decide. If you can't meet my requirements, then I will eliminate you tomorrow. Now go back and prepare yourself." Nanako blushed, then bowed her head, then walked out funnily. "Uncle, the test of physical strength, isn't it a little bit unfair for these young kids? Especially for these 3 girls?" The Patriarch asked. Masahiko looked at the Patriarch. "I have my own method. Now I want to go back and rest, anyone who tries to disturb me today will have to fight me." The next day, Masahiko went to the 4th training ground. The children have been waiting for quite a while there. There's also some children and adults there who want to see. It turns out I have attracted a lot of attention, I'm finally being considered as a highly respected elder. Masahiko's heart filled with joy. But things are not as it seems. When he walks closer, everyone gave him a cold eye. So that is the legendary Uzumaki Masahiko? When I was young, my father told me that he is. These children are going to be handed to him? Look, it's the second uncle of the Patriarch, so now he became an elder. Now, let us begin the test. Masahiko shouted. Not only the children, but he even shocked the adults watching. Noticing the silence around him, Masahiko nodded with satisfaction. The first test is physical strength. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Masahiko summoned 11 shadow clones. My shadow clones will supervise you while doing the push UPS. Be sure to use all of your energy, the more you do, the better. The people around him begin to talk. Does he really want these children to do that? Their ages are different, not to mention the girls. How can he call this fair? The crowds begin to stir up. Masahiko didn't pay any attention to them and watched the children doing push UPS while supervising them with his shadow clones, nodding with satisfaction. However, after 2 minutes, Masahiko got a headache. The youngest girl, the 6-year-old girl, who only managed to do 43 push-up, couldn't do it anymore and ended up crying. A young woman and man rushed from the crowd. They shoved Masahiko aside and tried to calm the girl. It looks like they are the girl's parents. 10 minutes later, the 10-year-old boy who did the most push UPS stopped. after he reached the number 1237. It was synchronized with that little girl stopping her crying. Masahiko glanced around and saw how the kids were barely catching their breaths, then nodded slightly. Rest for half an hour, then we will start the second half of the physical strength test. The young couple quickly looked up to Masahiko. Elder Masahiko, my girl is too young, this physical test is before he could even finish his sentence. Masahiko interrupted him saying, the second half is still push-up. The purpose is to see who can score more than the first half. The crowd around finally realized that this is not a test of strength, but a test of perseverance. The children who overdone it felt stunned. The break is over, let's start the second test. The second test is memory ability. I will perform a series of hand signs, and you have to remember the sequence correctly. Hare snake horse ram bird tiger hare snake horse ram bird tiger hare snake horse ram bird dog rat, Fuinjutsu, evil sealing method. In just 4 seconds, Masahiko managed to weave 20 seals. Okay, is there anyone who could remember this? Masahiko asked the children. Oh, I remember, hey, Grandpa Masahiko. The previously crying girl raised her hand. Okay, go ahead. Sure, the little girl does it slower than Masahiko, but she managed to correctly do the 20 hand seals. Masahiko nodded slightly, no wonder such a child is recommended. Her memory is quite exceptional. Then, we continue. He turned to the other kids and started doing the same seals again, not until the 4th time, one after another began to memorize it successfully. Nanako was the last one to try and do it correctly. In front of these talented kids, she felt uncomfortable. Break is over, now we will continue the second half of the physical test. Masahiko once again used 11 shadow clones to supervise the children doing the push UPS. The winner was an 8-year-old boy who managed to do 670 in the first half and 800 in the second half. 3 children get a negative result, the 10-year-old boy from before, the 6-year-old girl. The third one was the girl who was looking at Masahiko while clenching her teeth. Nanako felt like this test is revenge from Masahiko because she poured the cold water on him yesterday. Masahiko could see that, and he was barely holding his laugh. The crowds began to talk again. Things became interesting after they realized the purpose of the first test, so they were trying to figure out what Masahiko's third test will be. Although there is a lot of difference in their age, I think it will compatibility test, since it's the most important thing for a shinobi. I think it should be about chakra control ability. No, it must be about the basic 3-body technique. Upon hearing this, Masahiko shook his head slightly. No one could guess it right. The third test is cognitive test. I will ask 5 questions, the more you answer correctly, the higher your ranking will be. The first question, there are 2 barrels, one can hold 3 pounds of water, one can hold 5 pounds of water, and water can be used at will. How you can get precisely 4 pounds of water? Second question. The last question, there are 10 birds on the tree, if I killed one, how many birds remaining on the tree? What the hell is this? Riddles? Masahiko looked around. He saw the confused faces of the crowd and almost laughed. Who's the smartest kid here? Chapter 36, First Lesson. The selection kept going on all morning, and Masahiko ended up choosing 3 from the 11 candidates. He looked at his new disciples in front of him and nodded slightly. The first disciple is the crying 6-year-old girl, Yuriko. Masahiko thinks she has a high learning ability. Her chakra attributes are certainly wind and fire, perfect to learn Masahiko's techniques. The second disciple is the 8-year-old boy, Kanikiro, who have great perseverance. Masahiko plans to teach him lightning releases and taijutsu. He planned to teach him Konoha Senpyo technique just like Guy, and then claim it for his own. And last is Nanako, the 11-years-old girl. Masahiko didn't expect this, but Nanako, who seemed awkward at the beginning, could answer 4 out 5 questions correctly. The only one she couldn't answer is the last. It was a brain teaser. Masahiko planned to teach her Fuinjutsu. Because different than ordinary ninjutsu, Fuinjutsu or sealing technique is a test of the user's cognitive and mental ability. Very good, thus the first Konoha team is officially established. Masahiko clenched his fist, then raised it, with a smile. What is the first class of the first session, Grandpa? That was Nanako asking. Is there a second team, Grandpa? Kanikiro asked. Grandpa Masahiko, what is Konoha? Yuriko asked. Facing these series of questions, Masahiko just ignored these kids. You just need to know that all of you are the first team of Konoha, and you the rest in the future. Now, it's the time to teach you some powerful ninjutsu. Upon hearing, the three children forgot all about their questions and became excited, including Nanako. But before that, I need to know what jutsu you've already mastered, then I will decide what to teach you next. I only have 3 bodies technique * grandpa. Crying Yuriko whispered. This 3 bodies technique means the 3 basic ninjutsu for academy students to master, which are the basic ninjutsu, basic taijutsu, and basic genjutsu. It's already excellent. I will teach you another one. Masahiko nodded and smiled. If Naruto knew that this crying girl has mastered 3 bodies technique at the age of 6, he would feel like killing himself. I can do the 3 bodies technique and some basic lightning release, Kanikiro said proudly. Very good, lightning, just like Sasuke. Masahiko nodded. Masahiko then turned to Nanako. What about you? Nanako looked down. I only know 3 bodies technique. Masahiko smiled and didn't scold her. Then I will teach all of you something interesting. Masahiko glanced slightly, and he could see how all 3 of them seemed like they were looking forward to this. Then he said, shuriken throwing training. Their motivation suddenly collapsed, and started to doubt this whole thing. Masahiko smiled wickedly when he saw their expression. It will be your first lesson. Don't you dream of learning great ninjutsu, before you master the basics. Masahiko brought 3 target dummies then said, look, when you can do this, I will teach you other ninjutsu. Upon saying that, he took out 3 shurikens and put them in his right hand and then threw them simultaneously. The 3 shurikens landed precisely on the center of the dummies' target marks. And also, I have to teach every single one of you something else separately. Yuriko, you're first, the rest of you start practicing shurikens throwing. Masahiko brought Yuriko to an empty space, then he weaved a series hand seals, snake ram monkey boar horse tiger, cat on great fireball technique. Masahiko released a big fireball and shoot it to the sky. Yuriko got surprised. Masahiko then said, you don't have to summon the fireball, your chakra isn't enough to do it. I only want you to copy the hand seals. It requires 6 hand seals to cast a fireball, and I want you to do it in less than 2 seconds. Now go and practice it. Yuriko nodded, yes, Grandpa. Hey, call me sensei next time, okay? Now go back to practicing shuriken throwing, and call Kanikiro over. Okay, sensei. Yuriko nodded, then she went back and called Kanikiro over. Kanikiro, your perseverance is good. There are lots of physical techniques that you can learn. Besides, doing the shuriken training, you have to carry weights every day. Whether it's weighted clothing or bracelet. It's for your self-restricting practice. Masahiko said. I will go to the blacksmith later to forge some weights for you. Got it, sensei. But Kanikiro then tilted his head and asked, but teacher, what is self-restricting practice? Self-restricting is a form of practice. The main object of this training is to push your potential. When you reach your limit, you will need to break it, by putting a handicap on yourself to challenge that limit. To put it simply, it's to make your training harder by adding more heavy weights or adding more repetitions. It will make your training more rigorous. Just do your best so you can keep on moving forward. You have the gift of perseverance, and that's what makes you a genius too. A great ninja said this before, keep that in mind, Masahiko explained. Note, a quote from Mato Guy. Kanikiro seemed to understand and nodded his head, saying, I understand sensei. Okay, now go back and call Nanako over. A couple of minutes later, Nanako came and stood in front of Masahiko. Masahiko looked at her, then smiled and said, I was surprised by how good your logical thinking is. From 5 questions, you managed to nail 4 of them. Nanako smiled and blushed. The first 4 questions are related to the water in the bucket. And every day, I use the buckets and water to do the chores. Ah, I see, so that's why the expression on Masahiko's face changed, and he seemed quite displeased. He felt the urge to drop her as an apprentice, but Masahiko felt like he should give her a chance to prove herself first. Well, it doesn't matter how you answer it since now, you are my pupil and considering that your ninja skill is not that remarkable. Then you will start learning Fuinjutsu with me. Masahiko took out a scroll, then continued, this is the principle and the foundation of the clan Fuinjutsu, you can check it out later, and start studying it. Now go back practicing shurikens throwing. Masahiko gave guidance to his pupils one after another. Then he returned to the shurikens throwing practice ground. He found a stone to sit on and kept watching from a distance his pupils training. Of course, the fourth training ground has a lot of people training there. The 8 children who were eliminated before also were practicing there, working hard to show their effort, hoping that Masahiko would change his mind. Besides these children, there are also some instructors from the clan who were responsible for teaching other kids. They've been paying attention to Masahiko's teaching. But after watching for a while, they didn't find anything notable. This kept going for an entire week. The 3 kids' shuriken throwing technique has improved a lot, so he ended up adding more targets, which was enough for them to practice on for a while. As for the separate training, except for Kanikiro, who has become used to the self-restriction practice, the other 2 kids have made only a little progress. Masahiko didn't feel disappointed about this. He understands that Fuinjutsu and hand seal training cannot be learned in a short time. Masahiko wanted to keep the relaxing life he has been living for this entire week, but then a line of familiar Chinese characters popped into his thought, interrupting his peaceful life. Witness and do a major change to the storyline of Naruto World, the 12 Guardian Ninja. Reward, plus 5 witness points, *8. Major change. Masahiko didn't expect to get 40 witness points from this. Masahiko checked his status bar, and he has 65 witness points after years of hard working. Now, it's time to distribute some points, and verify that guess in my heart. Chapter 37, Scorch and Dark Releases. Masahiko looked at his status bar. Name, Uzumaki Masahiko. Age, 27 years old. Chakra, 304, plus, Physical, 323, plus, Technique, 3614, plus 10, Transformable, 3 Body Technique, LV10, 100,000, Max Level, Shurikenjutsu, LV10, 100,000, Max Level, Earth Attributes, Doton, LV4, 110,223, plus, Wind Attributes, Futon, LV5, 214,328, plus, Fire Attributes, Katon, LV3, 32,335, plus, Water Attributes, Sudin, LV2, 10,000, plus, Lightning Attributes, Raiden, LV2, 10,000, plus, Sealing Technique, Fuinjutsu, LV6, 402,328, plus, Special Talent. Perceptive Mining, LV6, 10,030, Blacksmithing, LV8, 40,059, Rank, S, Lower Patriarchal Level, Witness Points, 65. Something was troubling Masahiko. When the wind attributes reach level 4, he could learn the basic Raise Non, then when it reaches level 5, he could use the Raise Non easier and also learned another variation of it, like the Raisin Shuriken. When his sealing technique reached LV5, he managed to learn all the secret sealing techniques of the Uzumaki clan until there wasn't any more to learn. However, judging that the max level is 10, there are still 5 more levels to reach. Masahiko wonders, what kind of things will happen with each level UPS. Masahiko looked at his wind attributes and put 19 witness points. Wind attributes, Futon, LV6, 404,328, plus, fusible, can be fused. Masahiko noticed a new note beside the wind attribute, then took a deep breath. Is this the Kekii Genkai, bloodline limit? Masahiko thought for a while, then suddenly his face turned black. Wait. What attribute can be fused with the wind release? He thought. Although he has seen the anime before, he didn't really have a clear insight on the combinations of the Kekii Genkai. He can only remember the combination of the wood, which is the earth, and water attributes. But Masahiko thinks that it will not be easy to use since it requires the Hashirama's genetics, and even if he obtains it, his chakra won't be enough to use probably, which means, Yamato Captain, just another failure. Masahiko looked at his status bar again. Wind, and soil? Dusty? Nah. Wind and fire? Well, wind can complement the fire attribute. Not bad. Wind and thunder? Is there anything like that in the story? Wind and water? Ice. Well, this is something I can consider. Now considering between the fire and water attribute, Masahiko took quite a while thinking which one should he invest for now. Finally, he decided to choose the fire attribute. Also, another consideration, if he could also fuse the earth and fire attributes to create the dust release, the technique of Onaki, the third Tsuchikage. That technique looked sexy. Since he has the opportunity to obtain that technique, he should pave that direction. Masahiko clenched his teeth and added 37 points to the fire attribute. Fire attribute, Katon, LV6, 402,335, plus, fusible. Seeing now the fire attribute can be combined, Masahiko couldn't wait to combine it with the wind attribute. Scorch attribute, Shakuton, LV6, 806,663, plus, removable. Scorch? Masahiko laughed out loud. Isn't this the technique of the famous Kunoichi Pakura of the Scorch release or something? It didn't matter, he got his first Kekii Genkai, and he was eager to use it. Masahiko quickly walked to the first training ground. There, he concentrates, he didn't weave any hand seal, he just imagining it, concentrating. Several small fire orbs gathered around his body. Just by the mere thought, Masahiko could adjust the size of these fireballs. Masahiko laughed sincerely, "Zai-ha-ha-ha! Go! My little fireballs!" Several fireballs quickly blasted forward, causing a cloud of smoke. The smoke slowly faded away. Masahiko looked at the craters left on the ground and nodded slightly. Well, this isn't half bad, it's quite comparable with the Raise-Non's strength. Now with this, my skill set has become wider. I need to test it more. Masahiko did a hand sign. Scorch release, super stream kill. When Masahiko felt chills just by watching his own ninjutsu. I think it's possible to evaporate the water of the human body instantly using this technique. I should be cautious using this one. After half an hour, Masahiko conducted a detailed test on his new Kekii Genkai. And surely the result made him really pleased. This is a ninjutsu that can both attack and defense. These fireballs float around the body, which allows the user to flexibly use it in offensive and defensive situations. After he finished experimenting, removed the fusion, then suddenly, a bright idea flashed in his mind. Masahiko has fused the wind attribute to the fire attribute before. What would happen if the fire was merged with the wind? Dark attribute, Maiden, LV6, 806,663, plus, removable. There's another form of Kekii Genkai? Dark attribute? What is this? After thinking for a while, Masahiko remembered something. The dark release, Maiden, appeared in Naruto movie, Will of Fire. It was the jutsu of the main villain of the movie, Hirako. That jutsu brought a lot of trouble to Naruto. He remembered that this jutsu could absorb other ninjutsu and emit blue flames. This is actually a very powerful bloodline limit. Let's see the method of using. Masahiko thought about it. Fortunately, when the Kekii Genkai is formed, some information related to the technique will also get planted in his mind. Otherwise, he would have to wait for God knows how long to ask Hirako about it. Masahiko weaved some hand seals. After more than 50 hand signs, a symbol appeared on Masahiko's hand. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone. Masahiko created a shadow clone and made it use the Raise-Non. Maiden Kyuakatsuku, inhaling Mwa. Masahiko's shadow clone then attacked him with the Raise-Non, and Masahiko blocked it with the palm of his right hand. The mark on his right hand glowed, then the Raise-Non was somehow sucked into Masahiko's right hand. Masahiko is quite pleased by the result. The clone then weaved another hand seals, Futon Great Fireball technique. Then the clone spews the fireball at Masahiko. Masahiko stretched his hand in front of him with his palm facing the direction of the fireball. Maiden inhaling Mwa. The fireball couldn't even reach Masahiko before it got completely absorbed. Then Masahiko stretched out his hand, Maiden Hajimento, Judgment. The chakra from the two absorbed techniques got transformed into light blue flames and flew toward the shadow clone. Doton Mud Wall. The clone released a mud wall to defend of Masahiko's attack. But the blue flame penetrated it directly and hit the shadow clone. Masahiko nodded, well, the power is good. But ouch, the clone really took a beating. The memories of the shadow clone return to the caster when the clone disappears. By distributing the witness points, Masahiko got 2 new Kekii Genkai. Masahiko is delighted by this outcome. Whether it was the Scorch or Dark Release, he really managed to improve his attacking ability. As for the defense, with Dark Release's unique ability, he no longer needs the shuriken substitution technique anymore. Masahiko then looked at his status bar again. There were still 10 witness points left. Clenching his teeth, he spent 9 points on the lightning attribute. He originally wasn't planning to use the lightning release, but that boy's main nature chakra is lightning, and he needed to learn it so he could teach him. After distributing a lot of witness points, now Masahiko's attributes have been greatly improved. Name, Uzumaki Masahiko. Age, 27 years old. Chakra, 533, plus, physical, 323, plus, technique, 3614, plus 10, transformable, 3 body technique, LV10, 100,000, max level, shuriken jutsu, LV10, 100,000, max level, earth attributes, Doton, LV4, 110,223, plus, wind attributes, Futon, LV6, 404,328, plus, fusible, fire attributes, Katon, LV6, 402,335, plus, fusible, water attributes, Sudden, LV2, 10,000, plus, lightning attributes, Raiden, LV4, 100,000, plus, sealing technique, Fuinjutsu, LV6, 402,328, plus. Special talent, perceptive mining, LV6, 10,030, smithing, LV8, 40,059, rank, S witness points, 1. So now I'm promoted to S rank? Neat. Masahiko sighed emotionally, unconsciously, I've become one of the strongest people in the land of fire. Masahiko laughed out wickedly. Chapter 38, Shinigami Mask. 3 years later, teacher, isn't my monkey mask cute? Masahiko looked at the monkey mask. The clan has been too stable in recent years, and more children are being born every day. Somehow, every child in the Uzumaki clan loves these masks. Thus today has held its first mask festival. Sensei, seeing Masahiko's distracted face, Yuriko whined. Oh, it looks good on you. Where is the other 2? Masahiko returned to reality and asked Yuriko. Kanikiro is still practicing, he doesn't want to come. Yuriko frowned, Nanako-chan is still choosing her mask. Masahiko nodded. In the past 3 years, Kanikiro was the most satisfying student. It seems the self-restriction training method benefited him greatly, or maybe because his physical talent is very high. At the age of 11, in terms of physical strength, he's already on par with a Jonin, which is seriously amazing. It was astonishing to the point where he made Masahiko also gave it a go and try the self-restriction training, but eventually, he gave up. Certainly, Kanikiro is on the right path to becoming on the same level as Madoge and Rock Lee. As for Yuriko, who is now a 9-year-old girl, Masahiko feels that her character didn't change a bit, she's the same shy girl from before. Sometimes she could be a little crybaby, which made Masahiko feel like he was raising a daughter. However, she's very talented at Fuinjutsu, and her ninjutsu learning is exceptional. She already mastered almost all of the Futon and Katon techniques that Masahiko taught her. Masahiko plans to teach her Raise Non later. It's a matter of time before she grows up, and she can become a real ninja powerhouse. The last student, Sensei, here I come, look at my mask, it's pretty, isn't it? Just when he thought about her, Nanako suddenly appeared in the distance, shouting. Masahiko looked at her helplessly. The past 3 years helped Nanako to reveal her true self. After being thoroughly together with Masahiko, she's usually polite, but sometimes she exposes her hot temper side. Masahiko thinks that her personality is more or less like Sakura. Masahiko couldn't think of any normal girl that would call the Shinigami mask cute. Wait, what? A Shinigami mask? Masahiko's face changed upon seeing her mask. He carefully observed the mask and said, Nanako, what a good-looking mask. Would you let me take a better look at it? Sensei, you didn't even look at my mask. Yuriko seemed a little bit jealous. Masahiko ignored her, then he took the mask that Nanako handed him. And after a careful inspection, he let out a sigh of relief. It's just similar in shape, huh? Masahiko muttered to himself and didn't sense the existence of the Shinigami itself in the mask. But why? Is it a hint? Masahiko is still somewhat concerned because Nanako's Fuinjutsu has really leveled up rapidly in the past 3 years. He wouldn't be surprised if she ended up developing the Edo Tensei in the future. I think there's more into this, Masahiko said while handing over the mask back to Nanako. Then turned to Yuriko, who was still pursing her lips. Yuriko, can your monkey mask? After taking the monkey mask from Yuriko, Masahiko inspected it, then put it on his face for a second. Teacher, you look like a monkey. Yuriko said happily. Masahiko's face turned black, he quickly took it off his face, then handed it back to her. Maybe because I was sent by the monkey. Regardless of whether his two pupils understood his sarcasm or not, Masahiko then said, let's go to the festival mask together. Nanako and Yuriko nodded happily. Animal masks, character masks, Shinigami masks. Masahiko has no interest in the animal masks, which are for kids. Character mask. Hell, how come there's a character mask with my face on it? This is not funny. However, the moment he saw the owner of the shop, his face darkened. Aren't you the original second elder of the Uzumaki? Didn't you retire? Why are you selling masks? The stall owner is none other than Uzumaki Masao, the second elder of the Uzumaki before Masahiko. Masahiko. Masao smiled then looked at Masahiko. In the past few years, I had nothing to do, so I started making these masks, but my grandson didn't really like it, so I just thought I should sell it. How old is your grandson? Why doesn't he like them? Every kid in the village do. My grandson is 11 years old but he spends most of his time practicing all day. Masao said with a proud smile. Upon hearing this, Masahiko got suddenly stunned. Is your grandson name is Kanikiro? Masahiko asked. Masao nodded. You let me teach your grandson while we used to have grudges against each others? It has been 50 years. I don't care about these past conflicts, what done is done, and I think you've already forgotten about it too. Moreover, after I've witnessed the Battle of the Ore with my own eyes, I believe there's no one more suitable than you to teach Kanikiro, said Masao. True, I've forgotten about those old conflicts. Masahiko squinted his eyes looking at him, then continued, but we have a new one now, and it's called copyright infringement. What copyright? Copyright. Masahiko pointed at the mask with his face. Then without saying anything, he turned around and wanted to leave with his two pupils. Sensei, wait a minute. Nanako stopped him. 10 minutes later, Masahiko was looking helplessly at Nanako, who was putting on the Masahiko mask. Oh, the law awareness of these peoples is too weak. After the establishment of Konoha by Hashirama, I will ask him to isolate them from others. Masahiko mumbled to himself while shaking his head. Sensei. That is the place where I bought the mask. Nanako's words interrupt Masahiko's train of thought. He looked up and saw various types of death masks. The moment Masahiko walked near the booth, the owner immediately greeted him, Welcome Masahiko-sama. Did anything catch your eyes? The owner of the stall then noticed Nanako, who was standing behind Masahiko and said, Oh, hey little girl. Do you want another mask? This kid has a good taste, the previous one of its kind. Upon hearing the praise, Nanako smiled. She wanted to get closer to the stall, but Masahiko stopped her. The only one? Really? Why did you only make one? Masahiko asked the stall owner in confusion. Oh, actually, I didn't make that mask. The stall owner answered. All of these masks have been made by me. I inherited that one from my father. It's still in great condition, so I thought I should sell it. I'm not sure if one of my ancestors has made it, but I'm the owner of this shop now, and I... Okay, I understand. Masahiko interrupted him. He felt like he was gonna start telling a long story. Then he said, Nanako, Yuriko, let's go. The two nodded. I'm not really sure, if this mask was left by some great shinobi, or if it's just a plain old junk. Chapter 39, Shiki Fujin. Masahiko's house. Masahiko held the Shinigami mask in his hand and carefully examined it for nearly half an hour. Sensei. What are you looking at? Even though it looks scary, it's just a mask. The two students kept waiting impatiently for the whole time. Yuriko seemed okay, but Nanako was about to reveal her other personality. I'm afraid there's something in this mask, Masahiko muttered. After a careful examination, Masahiko's perception ability finally found something. It's a soul. Whose soul is this? Masahiko muttered to himself again. In this era, the soul is something unfamiliar to people. At least Masahiko never heard of any ninjutsu that deals with the soul until now. In this world, the soul can be manifested, some people can see it, and even manipulate the soul of the dead at will. Masahiko took a deeper look at the mask, and suddenly his expression changed and became serious. It's a terrible seal. I never expected the Uzumaki have such a powerful predecessor. After observing the mask for a while, Masahiko could finally guess where it came from. This mask is probably a catalyst for a certain technique. Around 100 years ago, the Uzumaki's ancestor faced an invading enemy. The Uzumaki then used a powerful technique to fend the invaders. The technique managed to destroy all of the enemies and also sealed their souls inside the mask. And for 100 years, the soul kept fighting one another. The invader's soul has already reached its limit, thus its knowledge, wisdom, and lost its will to fight, then became a death god that feeds only by absorbing the souls of others. Masahiko Fuinjutsu is already level 6, but he thinks that it's still not enough to apply a sealing technique as powerful as the one on the mask. He estimates that the ancestor who used this seal is probably around level 8 of Fuinjutsu. And so does the enemies who he needed to seal at the cost of his life. The identity of the enemy's soul, which was trapped inside this mask, is still unclear. Although in the Warring States period, a conflict between two forces does frequently happens, only sometimes either side becomes committed to exterminate the other or launch a full-force assault. Because they always fear, whoever loses will be left vulnerable for the other clan to attack. So generally, when one side has felt like they already have driven into the corner, they will try to negotiate a ceasefire or peace, they'll even pay for tributes. But it seems that the Uzumaki's ancestors would rather die than compromise with this enemy, indicating that the enemy is probably a foreign force. From the plot of the anime that Masahiko has seen in his previous life, he estimates that the enemies are probably the ancestors of the Gold and Silver brothers from Kumagakure. The Kinkaku and Ginkaku brothers are quite interesting. They could devour the Nine Tails' flesh and blood, and control Rikudo Sennin's 6 treasures. Damn Kishimoto, how many brain cells have you fried to come out with this plot? Sensei, who are these brothers? And who is Kishimoto? Nanako asked. Masahiko's face turned stiff, then he looked at her. Did I said something just now? When she nodded, Masahiko helplessly slapped his forehead. Oh, boy, nothing, it's just sometimes sensei likes to mumble to himself something that doesn't make sense, you don't have to think about it. Masahiko simply didn't want to explain. Nanako, could you catch a chicken for me? Nanako looked confused, but she was still willing to catch the chicken. Sensei, what do you want to do with the chicken? Yuriko asked Masahiko while both of them looked confused. Sensei will show you how to kill a chicken. Yuriko seemed a little bit confused but still excited nonetheless. A child is just a child. After a while, Nanako came back, holding the struggling chicken by the feet. Hold the chicken steady, snake boram hair dog, Fuinjutsu release. After he performed a series of hand seals, the mask somehow changed its facial expression, showing a creepy smile. Fuinjutsu chicken sealing technique. The chicken's soul is escaping from its body. The chicken which was moving before now stopped its struggling. Nanako, who was holding the chicken, felt dizzy, then she suddenly collapsed. Seeing this, Masahiko quickly put a seal on the mask 4-symbol seal. He resealed the mask, then he held Nanako using the other hand, and the spiritual manifestation from the previous fell back into the mask. Did I just witness the rebirth of the Shinigami? But because of its hunger, it's still fragile. It can only seal a chicken soul. But it can make Nanako dizzy. Well, for a high practitioner like me, the Shinigami doesn't have any effect on me. Sensei, what are you doing? Nanako gradually regained her energy. The moment she saw the lifeless chicken in her hands, she quickly threw it away, then she stared at Masahiko. Nothing, nothing, you're okay. Masahiko shook his head, again and again, feeling a little guilty. Give me my mask. Nanako grabbed the mask then pointed at mask in Masahiko, but he didn't respond at all. Did you just kill the poor chicken? Nanako shouted. Yeah, Masahiko smiled helplessly. Nanako, sensei has sealed the mask back, you don't need to worry. Yuriko beside him tried to help. Nanako's face turns red, and she was about to explode. Half an hour passed by. Masahiko comforted Nanako, and now she looks calm. Nanako, you must keep this mask safe. When it's time, I will reinforce the seal, the clan might end up using it. Masahiko explained. Then Masahiko explained the origin of the mask to the two girls, and both of them listened carefully. So this mask contains the souls of the enemies? Why not destroy it? Nanako asked after she understood the story behind it, and began to wonder. Masahiko got stunned since he knew that this mask is the Shiki Fujin. He never thought about destroying it. It's a critical ninjutsu that various characters will use in the future, and he didn't want to change the plot. Hesitating, again and again, Masahiko's finally made his mind, this ninjutsu should just be lost in time. He's still afraid of the consequences. However, with the raise non, he destroyed the mask completely. At that moment, he felt a sigh of relief. When he finally made his mind about this matter, a voice interrupted him. Ah, sensei, no, my mask. Nanako was about to explode again. This is what you've asked me to do, Masahiko said to Nanako upon seeing her, but she didn't seem happy about it. Therefore, Masahiko quickly ran out. I want to check on Kanikiro's practice. You two can go to the mask festival and have fun. You don't need to practice today. Masahiko went to the third training ground muttering to himself, these kids have no respect for their sensei. He looked at Kanikiro practicing from a distance, and felt some comfort in his heart. At least, one of his students is reliable. 1493, 1494, 1495, 2000. If you can't do that, you will do side kicks. From 2000 times the moment he Masahiko coming over, Kanikiro bounced upright. Oh! Battle time! Masahiko's face turned black. No way! Forget it, I'm going home. Back at home, a Chinese sentence suddenly flashed in Masahiko's mind, comforting his heart that was broken by his students. Witness and change a major event in the story of this world, Shiki Fujin. Reward, 2, *10, witness point. Chapter 40, Don't Do It. 2 years later. 2322, 2323, 2324, 5000 side kicks, you will do 10,000 squat jumps if you can't finish it. Don't get me wrong, this is Masahiko doing his training, not Kanikiro. 1 year ago, Masahiko accidentally lost in a physical duel with Kanikiro. Thus to regain his honor, he begins his training regime. Although he wasn't used to it at first, this didn't prevent some people from being shocked. To them, he was a 63 years old man, and the amount of this physical training is unbearable even for younger people, but in reality, he was about 22 years old, his body didn't take a lot of time to get used to this kind of training. Sensei! I finally managed to do it! Kanikiro said from a distance, with a face full of excitement. Masahiko stopped side kicking, and with a bitter smile, he said, that's really fast. What Kanikiro is practicing is the new technique that Masahiko taught him, Chidori. Initially, he didn't want to show him this technique so soon. But there's no other way. After he started his physical training, Masahiko discovered that his physical talent wasn't as good as Kanikiro. Regardless, Masahiko taught Kanikiro Chidori to slow down his physical training and distract him. As a sensei, it's really shameful to be weaker than your disciple, but without Masahiko even noticing, Kanikiro already mastered Chidori in 1 month. Although he was feeling a little bit bitter in his heart, he tried to hide it and replied with a disgusted expression, you're happy with. Shame on you, Yuriko is younger than you and mastered the raise non in 3 days. You're right, sensei. I will work harder. Kanikiro shouted out loud, then he immediately started doing push ups. Masahiko's face turned pale, when he thought to himself, if you try any harder, I will be the laugh of everyone in the clan. He immediately said, physical training can be temporarily slowed down. Have you already forgotten about the advanced version of the Chidori? Kanikiro immediately stopped his push ups and bounced up, I remember sensei, the Reikari, I will start practicing it immediately. Masahiko watched Kanikiro, who quickly rushed away to practice, then let out a sigh of relief, being around a genius will always make people feel stressed. Yuriko is fine, although, she's really talented in ninjutsu. Masahiko has lived for 60 years, and he has mastered hundreds of wind and fire releases that he can teach them to her slowly, but Masahiko has never really worked that hard on his physical strength. As an Uzumaki member, his body was naturally strong enough, and after he received his system, he fully relied on it to improve it. This year's hard work has brought some good results, as it was shown in Masahiko's status bar. The physical attribute has been improved by 100 points. Now Masahiko's physical attribute is close to 500. However, this is not enough. Although the current physical status of Kanikiro is only around 300 points, he's just 13-year-old now. If this continues it will only take him 5 years to. Masahiko muttered in his heart, no, I can't let this continue. How many sidekicks have I done again? Masahiko murmured. Forget it, 2000, let's continue. 2001, 2002, 2003. After an hour, Masahiko has finished 5,000 sidekicks and 10,000 squat jumps. Just when he was about to rest, Nanako ran over. Sensei! The patriarch is looking for you. Nanako, who's now a 16-years-old girl, has caused quite an uproar amongst the boys. Because she has grown up and became really beautiful. What's wrong, Nanako? Did you break one of the boys' heart again? Masahiko couldn't help but laugh. As soon as these words came out, Masahiko regretted what he has done and prepared to receive the backlash from Nanako. However, unexpectedly, Nanako just blushed when she heard Masahiko's joke and said, no, the patriarch has asked for you, the second and the third elder are already there. It seems like something big is going on. Masahiko blinked, he couldn't believe what he saw. It's been 5 years, but this is the first time he saw Nanako behaving in such a cute way. There's something behind this kind of behavior, Masahiko muttered but didn't ask her. Well, Mito got married to Hashirama when she was just 15 years old, Nanako is 16 years old now, he wouldn't be surprised if there were some action behind the scene. Masahiko paused, and then he replied, okay, I understand. He waved his hand toward Nanako and walked toward the assembly hall. After half an hour. At the Uzumaki's assembly hall. Masahiko shouted, founding a country? Is this a joke? That's right, the patriarch called Masahiko to discuss with him the establishment of the Uzumaki village. Masahiko glanced at the second and the third elders, then said, what do you two think? Uncle, we share the same idea. This was the second elder. The current 2 elders are actually Masahiko's second and third nephews. Masahiko remembered that in the original story of Naruto, the Uzumaki village was actually a thing. But it was destroyed by another country. Why do we suddenly have this idea? Masahiko still didn't understand. The other 3 looked at each other, and then the patriarch slowly said, it's because of our population. Since our war with the Kaguya, our clan has been closed to itself for almost 14 years. By then we only had 3,000 members, but now we have 10,000. In addition, there's a lot of non-combatant civilian who wants to join us because of the war. Their number is roughly estimated to be 100,000 peoples. Masahiko nodded with a thoughtful expression, when you mention it, this is a good chance for Nanako to find love, we have so many kids under 16 years old. The patriarch's face turned black, uncle, can we focus on the business here? Masahiko smiled, I know. But after we declare ourselves as a country, our relation with the Senju in the Land of Fire will be hindered a little, to who we will turn if we get attacked by a foreign enemy. The second elder asked in confusion, foreign enemies? Our land is surrounded by the sea and on our west is the Senju. Even if we're not that close to them, they will not attack us, right? I don't think so. And our northwest was once occupied by the Kaguya clan. I didn't hear of any clan taking that side. Masahiko wondered, how about the land of water across the sea and the land of lightning on the north? The 3 of them looked at each other, then shook their heads, they're still in a civil war, why should they bother adding more enemies and come to us for trouble? Masahiko is stunned, and then he remembers something. In a few years, the 5 great shinobi villages will be established, but the others don't know yet. Masahiko still doesn't feel very confident in his current strength, he wouldn't be able to defend against the cloud, or the mist if they came for trouble. But if he can only wait until Konoha is established, then I feel that something big is gonna happen in the Land of Fire after a few years, let's wait for a while. Although the patriarch and the other elders were left dumbfounded by Masahiko's words, they are not that eager to rush for the founding of the Uzumaki village. It's okay for them to wait for a couple of years and look for more people to join them and build the Land of Whirlpool. This way, the state founding assembly took a temporary break, and Masahiko went back to his house with a gift. Witness and change the story of Naruto World, side story the founding of the Land of Whirlpool. Reward, 2*10, witness points. Chapter 41, Rising Storm. In the past month, after the founding of the Uzumaki village event, Masahiko decided not to do anything at all, train, eat, sleep, and repeat. Everything seems so calm, relaxed. But he didn't know a storm was brewing from the north, ready to be unleashed. After 5 years, Tobirama visited the Uzumaki residence, and Masahiko finally got a chance to see him again. Tobirama, didn't you said that you will come to me when you develop a new ninjutsu? Or do you think this grandpa is no good for you anymore? Masahiko launched such rhetoric, putting Tobirama under pressure. Second grandpa, recently, I had a lot of good ideas, such as illusions that can fool your opponent, a technique to multiply explosive tags, a water technique that helps you move faster. Masahiko's face became gloomy and said, infinite darkness jutsu, tandem paper bombs, instant water transmission have been all developed. Masahiko then looked at Tobirama's face, to find that the former's face was more ominous. Did my older brother betrayed me and leaked this information to you, second grandpa? I'm still developing these techniques, but you already know the name. Masahiko's face was stiff, he didn't realize that he said this out loud. He quickly nodded, yes, your older brother is my inside man. Hashirama, sorry for the trouble. Far in the Senju residence, Hashirama was thinking about the development and construction of the village. Suddenly he sneezed. Then with a smile, he looked to the sky and said, Madara, are you thinking of me too? Back in the Uzumaki clan, Tobirama is trying to trick Masahiko to go to the Senju. Second grandpa, in addition to these few techniques, I'm working on a new one. Masahiko thought to himself, I feel like he's hiding something. He already developed all of the techniques he had in the anime, the only one left is the Edo Tensei, however, he couldn't even complete it before his death. Thus, he will start working on it at least 10 years from now. Thinking about this, Masahiko suddenly remembered when Tobirama was chased by the Kinkaku forces, he put his hand on the ground, and he could detect all of the shinobis around him and their strength level. Masahiko forgot the name, but he could remember the use of it. This must be some kind of perceptual class shinobi technique. Hey, what kind of ninjutsu you are developing now? A perceptual ninjutsu? Masahiko asked decisively. Detection type? Not really. He replied. Tobirama got puzzled by Masahiko's assumption. Is it essential to develop such a skill? Moreover, I already have the best perceptual shinobi by my side, so why wouldn't you go back with me, and help me with my new ninjutsu? Implying to Masahiko. Masahiko shook his head, you're still trying to trick me into going with you to the Senju. We can do it here. Why do we have to go back to the Senju? Just tell me, what is the matter? Tobirama smiled awkwardly, he took a deep breath then sighed, I still can't fool you, Grandpa, it's the Uchiha, we've been preparing for war recently. What? Why didn't you tell me sooner? We have to go quickly. I'll pack my stuff. Masahiko turned and go, leaving Tobirama more confused than ever. Masahiko rushed to his house while he looked very excited. It's finally time to war against the Uchiha. Konohagakure, here I come. Masahiko thought about it, but he decided to bring his 3 disciples along. No one else from the Uzumaki is going, so his 3 disciples will have the most combat experience after this. Hashirama will be there. I might end up facing the people from the Uchiha. I hope the ninja god and the genius shinobi inventor would help me protect them. They should be enough. After an hour, Tobirama saw 4 peoples coming his way, carrying luggage. After a brief explanation, Tobirama accepted, then they informed the Uzumaki patriarch about this. Thus their journey to the Senju began. On the way, Tobirama explained the situation to Masahiko. 9 years ago, after Hashirama paid that visit to Madara, the 2 clans stopped fighting. However, the Uchiha has never stopped invading other small clans' territories. However, it seems they stopped dealing with small clans and decided to go bigger. I'm afraid that Madara is going after my brother's head. Masahiko heard Tobirama's explanation, but he didn't seem very worried about it. He wondered to himself, I'm afraid that's not the case. This fight will leave Madara blind, and this will be the last battles between them. But Masahiko kept thinking. It's not like Madara to be reckless, he always been a man with a plan. He will move only if he has a plan. So if what Tobirama said is true, then Hashirama will be in deep trouble. Sensei, Uncle Tobirama is talking to you. Nanako said to Masahiko because she saw that Masahiko is lost in his thought. Masahiko snapped, he regained his awareness, then smirked, "What uncle? Tobirama? From my point of view, you should call him Tobirama-senpai." Upon hearing this, the three students reacted differently. Nanako just sighed and shook her head. Yuriko felt a little embarrassed, but she wanted to do it. And Kanikiro showed his excitement, then shouted, "Oh! I understand, sensei." Masahiko felt embarrassed by his disciple behavior. It's different when you have a lead disciple, but you're not a guy. The quarrel between the teacher and disciple didn't really bother Tobirama, he even ignored it. He kept thinking about the Uchiha's next step. After reaching the Senju, he simply left his three disciples, then got dragged by Tobirama to see Hashirama. When he saw them, he looked delighted. "Ah, little brother, you're finally back. A while ago, the Uchiha sent us a written challenge to war." "A written challenge to war?" Masahiko looked puzzled. In the Warring States period, albeit the constant battles between clan and families, he never heard even once a war invitation letter. "Show me the letter." "Ah! Second grandpa! You're here too." Masahiko didn't pay any attention to Hashirama, and he immediately took the letter from the top of the desk. "After 3 days, you will have a final showdown at the Valley of the Wind?" Masahiko's looked pale as if he has seen a ghost. "It's the decisive battle already? But it's happening too fast. There was never anything mentioned in the story about a written challenge to war. Is this a new development?" Masahiko's head got filled with questions. When Tobirama saw the content of the letter, he looked worried. "Big brother, is this a trick? What if they backstab us and attack the village after we go to the Valley of the Wind?" Hashirama shook his head and said, "No. Madara is not that kind of person. Now go prepare our people to depart tomorrow morning to the Valley of the Wind." Big brother Tobirama obviously didn't agree with this, but when he saw the long-lost serious expression on Hashirama's face, he couldn't help but nod in agreement. "So who will stay to protect the village?" Hashirama took a moment to think, then he answered, "Let Sora stay." Sora Senju, after the Battle of Sarutobi Mine 9 years ago, has successfully reached the lower patriarchal level strength. Now, he's the new elder of the Senju. Elder Sora Tobirama paused for a moment, then said, "I understand, I'll inform the people." After he walked out, Hashirama looked at Masahiko and said, "Second grandpa, this battle will not be like the ones we have faced before. If it's too dangerous for you, you can just stay here." Masahiko nodded, "I'm here to protect my disciples. So don't worry, I wouldn't act rashly." Chapter 42, Valley of the Wind. At dusk, in the Valley of the wind breezed, creating a whistling sound. It blew the grass swaying, as if it was dancing. Under the crimson sky, Masahiko's cape was fluttering by the blow of the wind. Numerous people of the Senju were gathered on the vast plain, staring ahead. Their clothes were embraced by the winds. All of them were clad in the Senju's clan armor, which is fitted for each of them. Masahiko's armor was distinctively different. He was wearing light clothes with a cloak on his shoulders. Well, some people prefer coolness over protection, and this was the case for Masahiko. Tobirama was also there. He looks at Masahiko, then he suddenly palmed his face and said, "Second grandpa, you don't understand, we've asked you to hide in the army, how you would do that with this dress?" Masahiko glanced at him, then snorted, "Maybe you're the one who really doesn't understand. Your older brother is trying to hide me in this massive army. But there's something more important than my safety alone." As he said that, Masahiko turned back, making Tobirama do the same. His disciples behind were wearing the same cloaks and light clothes. Masahiko made them wear themes so both of them can recognize each other easily on the battlefield. Hashirama lay unseen by the unwary eyes. He stood near the tall grass. Behind him, there was a dark brown land, with a similar color to his armor and dark hair. 10 years ago, the Valley of the Wind witnessed a great war. The whole land was scarred, blood soaked the earth, turning it red. Now, the grass is flourishing and covering these old scars. Perhaps nature got flourished from the corpses that filled it in the last great battle. Hashirama recalled that old battle. Here is the place where father and Uchiha Tajima fell in battle. Masahiko saw the looks of reminiscing on Hashirama's face, and he quickly remembered the war he heard about a decade ago. It was the most influential and known war of the Warring States. It was the war that marked the end of the older generation, where the last of the 4 great patriarchs have perished. And also where the younger generation of the Senju and Uchiha climbed to the top. Masahiko looked anxious. He was thinking, I don't know if I'm considered from the older generation or the younger now? After all, I'm 10 years younger than my second grandson. On the side, the new second elder of the Senju noticed Hashirama gazing silently to the horizon. However, he couldn't help but interrupt. Patriarch, the Uchiha said that the war will break out on the dawn of the 3rd day, and we came here 2 days in advance. Wouldn't it be wise to let the people rest first? Hashirama come back to his sense quickly, then shouted, everyone, set up the camps and rest. In the previous times, the shinobi will just end up resting in the open space, and at most, they will bring with them 1 or 2 tents for important meetings. But now, thanks to Masahiko's invention, the sealing scroll. Just in half an hour, the mountain got filled with tents all over the place. Although they weren't here for a vacation. They were even summoning food and meat from the scrolls. Masahiko got stunned at first, then he smirked and muttered, ha ha ha, what a great man I inventing this sealing scroll has granted me fresh meat everywhere. On the side, Tobirama looked in disbelief. He looked at Hashirama and said, Big brother, I didn't tell them to carry these things. With a guilty smile on his face, he said, I think they did on their own. Then shouted, since everyone has brought with them this fresh meat, let's hold a banquet while the Uchiha is not here yet. Oh! Long live the patriarch! The crowds shouted happily. Thus, right before the Valley of the End event, a grand banquet got suddenly held. Fortunately, the Uchiha kept their word and didn't show up before these 3 days. On the following days, Tobirama dragged with him Masahiko and used water and earth techniques to clean the place. He was afraid that the Uchiha will know they had a banquet just before the battle. After the cleaning, several shinobis gathered around and prepared to build fortifications. Of course, the significant advantage of coming to the battlefield sooner wasn't only to have a banquet but to seize the opportunity of having a great position on the battlefield. The Valley of the Wind. Damn it, why are people calling it Valley it a freaking plain? Masahiko couldn't stay quiet about this. He was angry because Masahiko tried once again to play it cool in front of Hashirama. He wanted to set up a trap on the cliffs, surrounded by them from both sides. Masahiko planned to use a technique and make the cliffs collapse and bury all of the Uchiha armies. But it turns out the Valley of the Wind is actually a vast plain. Hashirama then said, Second Grandpa, it's actually a valley before, but its landscape got changed from the previous wars. Masahiko then nodded, I see, then this place should be renamed then. How about the 5-head of the Sakura? Note, referring to Sakura's huge forehead. Tobirama just quietly followed his brothers on supervising the establishment of the fortifications. In fact, there was no defensive fortification, they were just digging in some hiding places and distributing some bomb papers in it, so the lower-ranked shinobis can still play a more significant role in this battle. The Warring States period has always been like this. Masahiko felt that he doesn't need to interfere with this. So he called his 3 disciples to give them some instructions before the beginning of the battle. According to Masahiko's judgment, between the 3 of them, the most powerful one is Yuriko, but here weak confidence made her unable to win against Kanikiro once. Masahiko was most worried about her. So after he thought about it, he assigned her in the trench to help there. Hoping she won't have to face the enemies directly. As for both of you, follow me in battle. I will point out the appropriate enemies for you to fight and test your skills. Kanikiro was excited and agreed with a loud roar. But Nanako seemed worried. Sensei, let me protect Yuriko. Masahiko glanced at her and said, No. You didn't come all the way here to do that. I have taught you how to use Fuinjutsu for actual combat. This battle is the right opportunity to test your skill. After he finished assigning these tasks for his disciples, Masahiko then just waited idly, looking at the Senju brothers boringly, while supervising the preparations of fortification. Time has passed, and now it's already noon. The Senju have finished all of the preparations, and now they were resting in their tents, waiting for the arrival of the Uchiha. At this time, Masahiko suddenly felt a slightly familiar chakra. This chakra, it's not the Uchiha, this is Senju Sora. Surely, in the distance, they can see a figure approaching quickly. It was the great elder Sora who should have stayed in the village. Tobirama's face suddenly changed. Big brother. Hashirama quickly rushed toward him. Sora then promptly said, Patriarch. I saw Madara near our village. Hashirama says, is he alone? Sora replies, yes, I only see and sense him. Hashirama nodded, Madara, do you plan to fight me one-on-one? Tobirama, you take charge of preparing our people to face the Uchiha, I will go back to take care of Madara. Hashirama then hesitantly said, Sora, let's go. Both of them quickly rushed back to the village. Chapter 43, Young Again. After Hashirama left, the Valley of the Wind fell into silence. Throughout the war for this past century, Hashirama has been the undisputed strongest shinobi in the warring states. In the heart of the Senju, as long as their patriarch is with them, no enemy cannot be defeated. Now that Hashirama has left, the fire in Senju clan's men's heart got withered. Looking around, Tobirama said, what happened with all of you? The patriarch has left, but so does the Uchiha's patriarch. Do you want to lose to the Uchiha? Upon hearing Tobirama saying that, the Senju got quickly fired up again. Just the thought of them going to the Uchiha made their blood boil. How could they live with themselves after that? Masahiko thought for a while. He couldn't help but feel that something is wrong. Neither of Hashirama or Madara is here. Is this the one where Izuna dies? However, after half an hour, Masahiko's face is changed dramatically. He felt something ominous. His perceptive ability sensed a group of shinobis coming from a distance, it was definitely the Uchiha. But the most important thing is, they were led by Madara. Oh, crap! Hashirama got played, there's no such event in the original story. Did I change the plot? Is it because Hashirama learned Senjutsu earlier? Masahiko looked around and felt that the whole Senju army is not enough to stop Madara. Hey! Masahiko turned around and looked at Nanako and Kanikiro, change of plan, both of you go back and protect Yuriko, I'm afraid I can't take care of you in this battle. Sensei Kanikiro tried to find out the reason, but Nanako quickly dragged him. This was the first time for Nanako to see Masahiko's serious face. Shit! Things went south really quickly. Masahiko was anxious. Second Grandpa, why did you order them to fall back? Masahiko smiled, the next battle, we will need all of our strength in this battle. Tobirama didn't quite understand at first, but after a few moments, he finally did. On the horizon, a black dot suddenly appeared, then another one, later these dots became a black line, then in a moment, the darkness filled the vast plain in the distance. All of you come to me! Masahiko shouted. His battle cry made the Senju shinobis by his side terrified as the wind burst out around. At that moment, Masahiko thought, if it's really Madara, then I will need to deactivate the body transformation technique. To maintain his 48 years old appearance, Masahiko used the body transformation technique all the time. His level 10 body transformation technique didn't really use a lot of energy, it usually doesn't produce any notable side effects. But against Madara, he will need every drop of chakra. At the Sarutobi mine battle, Masahiko didn't break his body transformation technique, even when the Hatake Patriarch is fighting against him. But this time facing Madara. Tobirama didn't ask again, just by looking at the horizon, now he understood the situation, why Masahiko has sent his disciples into the back line, and why he seemed so serious. He now understands who they are up against. He turned his head to Masahiko quickly, Second Grandpa, I will stop Madara, you just need to quickly deal with Izuna, only by that we will have a chance. After Tobirama said this, he saw something unusual with Masahiko. Masahiko smiled, then took off his hat, and his cool cloak. What is it? Are you surprised by my handsome young face? I will handle Madara and show you how strong I am now. Second Grandpa Tobirama was speechless, he widened his eyes and opened his mouth with an evident touch of shock on his face. At that moment, Masahiko thought that Tobirama got surprised by Masahiko's handsome face. Immediately, Tobirama turned around, facing the Senjus army, who seems to be panicked, brace yourselves. In order to defeat Madara, the second grandfather Masahiko has drained all of his vitality. He's willing to sacrifice himself for all of you. We just need to defeat the others, then the victory will be ours. The moment they saw Masahiko's young face, many people were touched by his sacrifice, then they shout, destroy the Uchiha. Wow, I didn't know that I'm this handsome. Masahiko is proud of himself. Madara was now getting closer, the army was only 200 meters away from the Senju entrenchment. When he finally reached the attacking range of the Senju, he quickly looked around, but seemed disappointed. Hashirama is not here. Madara said this, then stared at Izuna. Masahiko knew it, even if he had a great grudge against Hashirama, Madara wouldn't use such a dirty trick to win against him. Big brother Izuna looked at Madara. This is a rare opportunity. I know. Madara interrupted Izuna, and without any more words, Madara used a hand sign, cat on great fireball. Seeing the enormous fireball coming their way, Tobirama prepared to counter it, but before he could finish his hand signs, Masahiko suddenly stopped him. He stepped forward and said, "Watch this, Mighty Dark Vacuum." Masahiko then straightened his arm, then faced his palm to the fireball. Suddenly a diamond-shaped mark appeared on his palm. When the fireball was about to hit him, the mark on his hand observed the fireball in. Madara. Your opponent is me. Masahiko proclaimed this while he looked at Madara. This technique Madara got slightly surprised, then he looked at Masahiko. An Uzumaki? Next to him, Izuna whispered, "This Uzumaki guy, big brother, doesn't he look familiar?" Madara thought for a moment, suddenly a forgotten memory flashed in his hand, "You were that old man 14 years ago." Masahiko smirked, "Madara, I didn't expect that you would recognize me." Madara got really angry, "You old far. Still acting so mighty in front of me. Come on, I should have killed you 14 years ago." Upon saying that, Madara was about to rush forward, but Izuna stopped him. "Big brother, the old guy somehow draining his vitality, he won't be able to keep this form for a long time. The Senju has already prepared their fortifications, and now there's him. If somehow you were dragged by him, our people will suffer heavy losses. Our people have just arrived in this plain, we need to take a rest. We are not in a good position. And Hashirama won't be here for at least 8 hours. Big brother, focus on the big picture." Izuna managed to convince Madara, thus, he shouted, "All of you fall back 1 kilometer, we will rest for a while." When he saw the Uchiha temporarily retreating, Tobirama sighed with relief, but he still was worried. He turned to Masahiko and said, "Second grandpa, how long can you keep this form? If you can't hold on, we will just take the initiative to attack." Masahiko's face turned black. Tobirama was talking to him as if he was gonna die at any moment. Looking at Tobirama, Masahiko said, "No, we just need to stall. The best choice we have it to waiting for Hashirama to return. We need to stall as long as we can." Tobirama nodded, indicating his understanding. Suddenly, Masahiko's 3 disciples rushed to him. Yoriko, who her eyes were in tears, shouted, "Sensei!" The girls cry and hug Masahiko. Seeing how she was gonna start crying, Masahiko quickly comforted them, "Don't worry, I am fine, this sensei of yours still has a long life to live." Despite Masahiko's attempt to comfort them, all of the 3 disciples looked sad and sorrowful, while Yoriko could no longer hold her tears that flowed down on her cheeks. Masahiko felt helpless. "Sigh, how did I end up in this situation? Why are they acting as if I'm gonna die?" Chapter 44, The Fight Against Madara. An hour has passed, and the sun was half set, between the mountains. Patriarch. There's no sign for the arrival of the Uzumaki's troops. An Uchiha scout reported to Madara. Madara, who was sitting on a big stone, showed impatience and said, "Izuna. It's getting dark. In a few hours we need to attack." Izuna looked confused, "But dark is good for us, brother." Madara shook his head in pain, then covered his face. When Izuna saw this, he was surprised, "Big brother. Your eyes." Noticing that something is happening with Madara, Izuna immediately issued the order, "Everyone, gather up and prepare to attack." On the other side of the battlefield, Masahiko sensed the movement of the Uchiha thanks to his perceptive ability, then turned helplessly at 3 pupils still crying beside him. "Well, don't cry, this teacher of yours is not dead yet. I want all of you to go back to the rear, the battle is about to begin." After seeing his disciples go back, Masahiko himself felt like crying, "What the hell? I won't be able to explain this unless I really die." Tobirama saw the Uchiha is advancing toward them, and shouted, "Everyone, into your position, gets ready to engage." Masahiko looked at the Uchiha army in the distance, they were still quite far, he nodded slightly and planned his move. Several small fire orbs appeared in front of him. The balls seemed very dense, then gradually changed its shape and turned into small shurikens. Scorch release, Raisin shuriken. Several blazing spinning shurikens penetrated the Uchiha's rank. Madara opened his eyes, and without saying a word, the pattern on his Mangekyo Sharingan rotated, Susanoo. Suddenly, the light blue giant fisted all the shurikens apart. Old man! You said I am your opponent. Then fight me! Madara shouted inside of the Susanoo, then rushed toward Masahiko. Masahiko looked at him, then gave him his usual mocking face, while rushing toward him. Tobirama ran in front of him, then shouted, "People of the Senju! Attack!" Then he quickly rushed to Izuna, his old rival. While Masahiko rushing to Madara, he says, "Madara! I hope you won't embarrass yourself again, the same way you did 14 years ago." Madara gave him a stern look, but didn't answer him. As they were getting closer, he started doing hand signs, Katon Gakamekyaku, Great Fire Annihilation. A bigger blazing flame than the previous got spewed from Madara's mouth. "This time, I will burn you to crisp." Masahiko looked at the incoming flames but didn't prepare any defensive jutsu. He threw a shuriken, which pierced its way through the fire, then when it appeared in front of the Susanoo, it launched the shuriken substitution technique. Masahiko suddenly appeared from nowhere in front of Madara's eyes, then he smirked and shouted, "Might and Judgment!" A blue flame appears from Masahiko's palm, targeting the Susanoo's chest directly, and leaving a hole behind exposing Madara. Then without any hesitation, Masahiko kicked Madara. He got thrown back by Masahiko's kick, which made his control over the Susanoo is weaker, and the blue giant gradually dissipated. Madara, ironically, the history repeats itself. Even after 14 years, I keep kicking your butt. Masahiko watched Madara barely holding his nerves and couldn't help but laugh. Madara felt ashamed, "Damn old fart. You're always using so many strange ninjutsu." Madara then took a stance, "I didn't really want to use it, but I can't let this old geezer mercy anymore." Susanoo. Both of Madara's eyes shed blood tears. His Susanoo then stood up and grew out 2 pairs of arms, with 2 of them holding huge lightsabers. Masahiko jumped back, with visible cold sweat on his forehead. "Shit! Fight against the previous Susanoo was already hard, now this. Damn! You really want me dead, don't you?" Madara got tired of Masahiko's nonsense and attacked him with 2 swords from above. Doton Earth Shore Return. Massive slabs of rock appeared between the 2 of them. But surprisingly for Masahiko, this didn't stop the Susanoo's sword and cut through them like butter. Fortunately, Masahiko used a substitution technique before he has to share the same fate as his rock walls. Masahiko wiped his forehead, "Phew, this is intense. I'm afraid that I'm really screwed if I don't take him seriously." Suddenly, Masahiko used the Sage mode. The feeling that Masahiko gave him now is totally different, and he could surely feel it. He got stunned for a moment, then said, "Isn't this the same technique as Hashirama?" Obviously, it brought some bad memories to Madara. Sage Art, Futon, Raisin Shuriken. Masahiko shouted that Raisin Shuriken is clearly in a different league than the previous one. Madara looked at the Raisin Shuriken getting bigger, then sneered, "Acting so mighty, old man, you know that you're far worse than Hashirama, right?" Madara blocked it with 1 sword, however, at the moment of the impact, the expression on his face suddenly changed. Without hesitating, he crossed the second sword and tried to block it, but still, he got pushed for 100 meters before he could entirely block its power. "I might be far worse than Hashirama, but you're far worse than him too." Masahiko poured fuel on the fire. Sure enough, Madara can't withstand hearing someone saying that Hashirama is better than him. As soon as he stood still, Madara put the Susanoo blades in a defensive position, then he started doing hand signs, Katon Great Fireball. "You're really worthy of being Hashirama's rival. You managed to figure out how my shuriken substitution works, but I still have 3 special kunai." Masahiko smiled, then he threw the unique 3 shurikens in 3 different directions. Madara quickly used his bloody Mangekyo Sharingan. The marks on his eyes were spinning at high speed. He was trying to figure out where Masahiko will appear next. But then suddenly he felt something, underground. Masahiko appeared from the ground beneath Madara's Susanoo. Sage Art Chidori Sharp Spear. Madara countered it with his blade. But Masahiko deflects it, then he seized this opportunity to leap closer to Madara. Maiden Inhaling Wa. Masahiko touched Madara's Susanoo. Not to be fooled for the second time, Madara used Genjutsu. The sudden mental attack stunned Masahiko for a second. Masahiko is now in a difficult position, so he didn't have any choice but to use the shuriken substitution again. After he has set a distance with Madara, Masahiko gasped slightly. Damn this Susanoo! There's no way to break through its armor besides using the inhaling wa. Now Madara knows how to counter it. Things went bad to worse. It's no longer possible to defeat him. Masahiko looked around. Tobirama was doing fine, and the Senju were winning, while his disciples were cooperating nicely to protect each other. Then I can only wait for Hashirama to come back. I got to stall him as long as I can. Masahiko disabled the Sage mode. The chakra consumption is high, it's not suitable for a prolonged battle. Madara noticed how anxious Masahiko is, and said, "Old man. Things aren't going your way anymore? You shouldn't provoke me in the first place." Then he rushed toward Masahiko. Scorch release, extremely steaming murder. Masahiko didn't want to use this dangerous technique, but except for the Raisin Shuriken that consumes a lot of chakra, he only had this technique to give Madara some trouble. Sure enough, it couldn't penetrate through the Susanoo, but through the layers, the heat reached Madara and burned him a little bit, which made him angry. "Old fart! You're so dead! Masahiko! Whoops, it turned against him. Doesn't anyone know how to log out of this world? This is a very urgent matter." Chapter 45, Not My Fault. The sun was setting, and the battle is nearing its conclusion. The ninjutsu battles have come to an end at that point, and it gradually turned into a physical confrontation. Masahiko didn't really have the time to think about his three disciples. In the face of Madara's relentless assault, Masahiko's physical strength seemed to reach its limit. "Oh man! If I just started training my body sooner," Masahiko sighed in his heart. He could only feel grateful to his disciple for losing that bet and for Madara, who was having problems with his eyes. Although he was facing death head-on, Masahiko stayed calm, because he could notice that the Senju have managed to gain the upper hand. In the distance, Uchiha Izuna was fighting Tobirama. Clang! The sound of their blades clashing was echoing through the battlefield. Tobirama seemed to gain the upper hand in this battle. Clang! Izuna's sword suddenly got broken. Tobirama was in an advantage because he was using the Raijin no Kin that Masahiko has forged for him. Desperately, Izuna could only use his genjutsu to avoid Tobirama attack. The latter's movements got stagnated because of it, and Izuna managed to dodge the falling sword. Katon Great Fireball. Facing the incoming fireball, Tobirama used a hand sign, Sudden Water Dragon Bomb. Their two jutsu collided. The water and flame explosion created a mist, which obscured their vision. Tobirama threw some kunaus, but Izuna avoided and blocked it with half of his broken sword using his Sharingan. Damn it! My eyes are at its limits. As he barely manages to avoid the kunau, he suddenly noticed that one of them had strange symbols on it. Flying Thunder God! Tobirama shouted, crossing through the plain. Surely, this is it, Masahiko murmured, it's the end. Initially facing Masahiko, Madara stopped his attack, his eyes now fixated on his brother. Masahiko saw that the story seems to be going back on its right track. Thus, he couldn't help but sit on the ground regardless of the situation around him. Tired, relieved, excited, he had mixed feelings that he couldn't express, but Masahiko knew one thing: he really needed to put his butt on the ground, and rest for a moment. This fight is the most dangerous fight I've ever faced. If it continues just for another 10 minutes, I would have really died. Masahiko shook his head, then smiled bitterly. I've never fought this serious. All that I was doing in my entire life was running away using my perception ability, but this time... Masahiko fainted out for a moment, thinking about this, but he suddenly realized that he could no longer see Madara. He turned to see the latter rushing toward Tobirama while using some hand signs. Damn it! This is bad. Hashirama isn't here, no one can stop his charge, but me. Masahiko got terrified. He gathered all of his strength to get up and help Tobirama. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice emitting from the side of the battlefield, Mokiton Wall of Tree. So this is really the end. His butt, which was half step away lifted from the ground, fell back again. Hashirama's stupid voice sounded at that moment as if it was the voice of an angel. Masahiko sat there for the rest of the battle. He watched the Uchiha slowly crumbles. And watched the fight between Hashirama and Madara, then he saw latter retreating, crying his brother Izuna. Sure enough, even with such a big advantage, Hashirama still let Madara escape, the story is finally returning to the right track. Masahiko recalled carefully what he has done in the past few years, looking for the thing that has caused this change, looking for the thing that caused him this crisis. Did this happen because I forced Hashirama to learn the Sage Mode earlier? Masahiko murmured, I hope if the system could give me more explanations. Masahiko then looked back and saw Sora unconscious and sealed by Hashirama's wooden release. The battle was over, Madara has already escaped, and Hashirama came to see Masahiko. Second Grandpa, thanks for what you did, you've bought me a lot of time. Are you okay? Masahiko shook his head and teased him, I'm fine, you're not getting rid of me yet. He didn't explain his appearance and then asked. What's the deal with Sora? When Masahiko asked this, Hashirama answered with a little bit of confusion, I don't know either. Sora suddenly went crazy. He attacked me on the road, and he kept murmuring about how he was always an Uchiha. But that's impossible. His parents are both from the Senju. Also, I'm not feeling any kind of genjutsu placed on him. Masahiko suddenly got shocked, then though out loud, could it be the Kodomatsu Kami technique? Hashirama asked, what gods? Note, the Kodomatsu Kami, literally meaning, distinguished heavenly gods. Forget it, after a second thought, it cannot be that technique. Masahiko replied explaining his thoughts. If one of the Uchiha somehow managed to awaken that technique, they wouldn't use it on Sora, but on Hashirama and end this war. Masahiko thought about something from 5 years ago. At the Daimyo Palace, he remembers he saw something that concerned him at the time but forgot about it later. One of the attendees was from the Kurama clan. This clan has only been mentioned in the anime as he recalls. Hashirama, have you heard about the Kurama clan? Hashirama thought for a moment then answered, the Kurama clan, huh? I heard of such clan located at the west side of the Land of Fire. Sure enough, Masahiko sighed and didn't know if he should laugh or cry. He always thought that he did something wrong that changed the plot of the story, but now he found out that it had nothing to do with him. Damn you, TV Tokyo. Now I even need to deal with your shitty fillers. Note, TV Tokyo, Naruto's animation studio. Masahiko looked at Hashirama then explained, the Kurama clan is not that strong. But every few generations, there will be someone from their family who will awaken a special Kekkei Genkai with unfathomable power in Genjutsu. This power can control other people's 5 senses. Hashirama then suddenly picked up, did Sora got controlled by that technique? Second Grandpa, can you undo it? Masahiko shook his head. This kind of genjutsu can only be undone by the caster. I'm afraid you have to go there yourself, you're the only person who could be immune to that genjutsu. Big brother, we've lost 500 men, 1,000 people got slightly injured, and 12 suffered serious injuries. I'm afraid we can't return to the family immediately, we need to deal with injuries first. After saying this, Tobirama looked at Masahiko, Second Grandpa, your 3 disciples are fine. You've got injured too, you need to rest. Masahiko breathed a sigh of relief, he was gonna rest for a while, but he suddenly hesitated, then jumped up. He suddenly bit his finger and shouted, Kukiyos no Jutsu, summoning technique. Then summoned an enormous slug. I've recovered a little bit of my chakra, I should be able to rescue some seriously injured men, bring them to me. Tobirama got touched, he glanced at Hashirama and said, Big brother, Second Grandpa, is now looking more like a Senjus patriarch than you. Hashirama seemed speechless, he could only face these words with a smile. Then the 2 brothers ordered some of shinobis to bring the seriously wounded to Masahiko. Seeing all the injured, Masahiko nodded at the summoned slug, then it split into several smaller slugs and treated their wounds. 25 minutes later, Masahiko reversed summon the slug with a tired look, now he has really exhausted his chakra. He looked up to the sky with Hashirama, Tobirama and all of his 3 disciples surrounding him, while his eyes got filled with tears, and said, it seems this is the end. Thinking of this, suddenly Masahiko's vision got dark, then he fell on the ground. The last thing he heard is, Second Grandpa. Asterisk 2. Sensei. Asterisk 3. Chapter 46, The Battle of the Soul. At that moment, Masahiko fell on the ground. Although it wasn't a normal thing for him to lose strength and fall on the ground, Masahiko knew that it had nothing to do with the draining of the vitality nonsense that Tobirama was talking about. Did I use a lot of chakra? This is his last thought he had before he went unconscious. The battlefield of the Valley of the Wind. After Masahiko fell, his disciples burst into tears. Hashirama shook his head and said, "Second Grandpa, you're already on your way to the other side, and the Senjo clan will never forget your sacrifice." Tobirama got saddened, his heart was full of sorrow. He took 2 steps forward, then looked at Masahiko carefully, then he suddenly looked at Hashirama. "Big brother." Hashirama didn't hear Tobirama, he kept weeping on Masahiko, talking to himself. He got lost in his thought, while his face was full of emptiness. "Big brother! Get yourself together. Second Grandpa is still alive, he's breathing steadily, he just falls into sleep." "Huh?" Hashirama looked at Tobirama, his face got filled with confusion and joy mixed up. "Really?" The 3 disciples quickly looked at Tobirama, they seemed to be overjoyed with this news. Deep into Masahiko's consciousness, Masahiko found himself in a place that was both familiar and unfamiliar. Is this the Uzumaki village? The place is right. When did these buildings change to black and white? And the village is very vast. Is it because of the population explosion? After that, Masahiko saw a huge battle breaks out. He couldn't hear the sound, and couldn't recognize the people, he could only watch the battle from the black and white light behind the shadows. Many people were falling down into the darkness, while 2 people who seemed to be the leaders appeared in the distance, fighting against each other until one of them took out a disc-shaped object. After a few exchanges of blows, both of the figures were simultaneously sucked into the disc-shaped object. "Disc? No, it's a mask," Masahiko whispered helplessly. "I thought that I've destroyed the Shinigami when I got those 2 witness points from the system, but I was actually doing the death a favor, I've let him free. So, I've pulled by him now into this darkness by him?" Masahiko gently shook his head. Some of the souls that were passing by told Masahiko that his soul, as a person who crossed over from another dimension, is stronger than ordinary people. The black and white world suddenly got destroyed, leaving him in this vast dark space, with only one soul left there with him. "Oh, is that a Shinigami? In just 2 years, it has already grown this much. I remember the last time I saw him, he was barely capable of sucking a chicken soul. But how the hell did I turn into a stick man?" Masahiko looked down, to see his hands and legs, to find it very thick, he really got turned into a stick man. The Shinigami then rushed to Masahiko, and Masahiko turned away and ran. "Hell, is this how strong my doubled soul is? I'm just a stick man. Seniors, I'm gonna die. Okay, I have to rely on myself. This is my spiritual world, and I should be the master of my own world." Somehow this time, Masahiko thought of the first time he played the video game League of Legends in his previous life. "Okay, I got this. Lend me your strength, League of Legends. Lend me the Twilight Dawn armament." Upon shouting this, suddenly, a sword and a shield appeared in front of Masahiko. Note, one of Diana Leona's skin, the Twilight's Dawn, Leona is one of League of Legends champions. Masahiko got overjoyed, put on his stance, and turned around to face the Shinigami, Death. "Taste this, Zenith Blade." Note, one of Leona's skills. 5 minutes later, the stickman, who now has lost one of his arms, was running away into the deep darkness. The gap in power is too big. Masahiko blade seems to not that effective, he stabbed the Shinigami several times, but it doesn't hurt him at all. In the end, he didn't have any choice but to run away. "I'm lost if I don't do anything. System. Come out, and help me." Name, Uzumaki Masahiko. Age, 22 years old, Endurance, 553, plus, Physical, 489, plus, Technique, 3834, plus 10, Transformable, 3 Body Technique, LV10, 100,000, Max Level, Shurikenjutsu, LV10, 100,000, Max Level, Earth Attributes, Doton, LV4, 121,223, plus, Wind Attributes, Futon, LV6, 425,628, plus, Fusible, Fire Attributes, Katon, LV6, 412,335, plus, Fusible, Water Attributes, Sudan, LV2, 10,000, plus, Lightning Attributes, Raiden, LV4, 103,608, plus, Sealing Technique, Fuinjutsu, LV6. 413,228, plus, Yang attribute, LV5, 200,000, plus, Yin attribute, LV1, minus 1,000, plus, special talent, perceptive mining, LV6, 10,030, smithing, LV8, 40,059, rank, S, lower patriarchal level, witness points, 41. Huh? Yin attribute is LV1? Is it because I've lost an arm? But it can be considered a blessing due to misfortune. The Yin attribute has finally appeared on the status bar. Masahiko then decided to add all of his witness points to the Yin attribute. Yin attribute, LV6, 409,000, plus. Masahiko, the stickman, grew out a new arm. He felt like somebody is inflating him like a balloon. His soul was expanding widely. He waited for the changes on his body to be completed, then Masahiko looked up, and suddenly he saw the Shinigami is already in front of him, and he shoved him by reflex. Only then, Masahiko managed to have a better look at the condition of his soul. Unexpectedly, Masahiko didn't become a giant, but he regained his true appearance, with a new sensation of strength. Is this the strength of the LV6 Yin attribute? So, if I can reach level 9 or 10, I will be able to roam the world in a spiritual state like Hago Romo? Masahiko thought about it, then he shook his head. Hell, I will be immortal at that point. Masahiko then looked at the Shinigami, who was continually struggling to get up. If it's decades later, your power would be enough to absorb the 9 tails, and I wouldn't be able to match you, but now. Masahiko went closer to the Shinigami, he clenches one of his fists, then smashed the Shinigami. Boom! The Shinigami then dissipating, and its fragments got absorbed into Masahiko's body. At that moment, Masahiko felt that his soul got stronger again. Yin attribute, LV6, 510,000, plus. Good, the increase is equivalent to 10 witness points and. Suddenly a sentence came flashing in front of Masahiko's eyes. Witness and completely change the main storyline of the Naruto World, the end of the Shinigami, obtained witness points plus 8, asterisk 10. With the previous 2 points, asterisk 10, I got rewarded by 100 witness points in total from this storyline, right? Masahiko muttered, changing such an important storyline will multiply the reward only by asterisk 10. Does this mean that the highest multiplication that I can get from the system is asterisk 10? Masahiko didn't want to think about it further. To learn this without any instructional book is really a pain in the butt. It's time to get out. I don't know how many people are waiting for me. Did I saw Hashirama shedding tears after I fall? Well, when you think about it, my life was really in danger. The moment he thought about it, the spiritual world disappeared, and Masahiko opened his eyes. Second Grandpa. You finally woke up. A gentle female voice came from the side. Masahiko thought about many of the first persons he would see when he opens his eyes, but he never expected that this person would be Mito. Alas, it was Mito, an 8-year-old Senjo Kenji who was playing around. Chapter 47, The Mind's Eye of Kagura. Second Grandpa. Kenji's sound was the first Masahiko heard after he woke up from the darkness. Masahiko smiled, little Kenji, I've almost mistaken you for Mito, I haven't seen you for 5 years, you grew up to look a lot like your mother. Second Grandpa, Hashirama was so worried, Mito said. Oh, is that so? Masahiko laughed, well, I'm happy you two are still in a good relationship. Masahiko looked around the rooms, it brought him back some memories. Is this the same room I lived in before? 14 years ago, I came here with you, and you married Hashirama. Mito chuckled, yes, and it's the same room where you practiced your yin seal. Masahiko smiled helplessly and seemed like he finally understood why Mito was waiting for him here. Masahiko's pupils, Hashirama and Tobirama, all thought that Masahiko has drained all of his vitality, and this was caused him this coma, but Mito knew that he's supposed to look like this, thus, she was so worried. Masahiko felt embarrassed for troubling her, he then smiled and said, I'm okay now, there's no need to worry. Mito nodded, I will take Kenji to the training ground, he hasn't practiced today. Masahiko nodded, go. He waited from Mito and Kenji to go out, then Masahiko shook his head a little in doubt. After he opened his eyes, he found out that the world has undergone a subtle change. Is it because of the new yin attribute? Masahiko whispered as he watched his status bar. The Mind's Eye of Kagura? Masahiko noticed that his perceptive ability is now gone and replaced with another skill called the Mind's Eye of Kagura. Masahiko, he clenched his fist and launched it to the air, then shouted, "Mind's Eye of Kagura, start!" For a brief time, Masahiko could see the chakra flow of the entire Senju clan. And he could even extend his detection range to a few miles. Mind's Eye of Kagura, is this Karen's ability? Masahiko always thought that his perceptive ability is similar to Karen's, only the previous one before had lower detection area because his talent was not good. Is this the advanced version of my perception ability? Is it because my soul power has become stronger? Masahiko muttered, it seems that Karen talents of the later generation are very great. If it wasn't for Orochimaru, she would have become as good as Kushina. Masahiko uses his newfound ability to observe the entire residence. There is the Patriarch's Hall, where Hashirama is their wait, he's not, maybe he went to see the Kurama clan. Masahiko was eager to study his new ability carefully, but he suddenly felt 3 people with 3 familiar chakras behind the door. Come in. Masahiko took the initiative to speak before one of them could even knock on the door. Sensei. His 3 disciples came in. We heard from Auntie, Mito, that you are awake. The 3 pupils said in unison. Masahiko scratched his head a little, Auntie? Yuriko, you can just call her big sister Mito. But she's at the same age as my mother. No, I think it's still better to call her big sister rather than Auntie. Okay. Ending this debate on how to address Mito, the 3 disciples finally remembered why they came in here. Masahiko repeatedly explained that his younger appearance is not the cause of draining his life force, but rather a special technique, but they didn't believe a word. In the end, Masahiko couldn't convince them and didn't have any choice but to drive them to go out of his room, saying that he needed to rest. After they left his room, Masahiko lolled back on his bed. Of course, he wasn't gonna start training, he just needed to think about what he needed to do next. If they don't believe it, the others want to. Masahiko thought for a while, then suddenly clenched his fist and shouted, that's it. Every day, by using body transformation technique, I will get older 1 year. I will keep doing this until my appearance is like 50 years old. Isn't it a cliché thing for a person to shorten his lifespan after getting a burst of unbelievable power? Then let's make it 53 years old. Live 5 years less with every use, this way, I will be able to use it 3 or 4 times more. Masahiko finally found a reasonable way to explain his change of appearance. And that shocked his 3 disciples when they found out that Masahiko was getting older in the next few days. Masahiko didn't rush to explain the change of his appearance but kept observing the training of his disciples. To his relief, Nanako seemed more serious in her cultivation and gradually showing extraordinary talent in Fuinjutsu. Yuriko now has a better personality, not childish and timid anymore, more mature and composed. As for Kanikiro, his effort and hard work really paid off, his development is getting faster and faster. Thus, the following dialogue often happens in the training ground. Kanikiro, come here. Let me see how strong you are. Sensei. Kanikiro wiped his sweat and rushed to Masahiko. Ah! With a scream, Kanikiro flew back. Masahiko couldn't really comment on this, he trained Kanikiro roughly sometimes, hit him, kick him, or maybe throw him. But all of this is done so he can get stronger, so the next time he fights, he can stay at the battlefield longer. Masahiko had a lot of doubts about Kanikiro. Even if he didn't get his guidance, his talents shouldn't be buried. However, in the original, Kanikiro has never been mentioned. He was afraid something happened to him. Did he died early in the story before he could get stronger? This kind of routine has been happening for a week until Hashirama finally returned, followed by Sora, who looked embarrassed. Both of them went straight to the assembly hall. What? Brother, you're letting the Kurama clan walk from this? The hall suddenly became noisy. I'm not surprised at all. Masahiko, who also was sitting there, said calmly. Don't worry about this, Sora. Hashirama looked at Sora and tilted his head a little. Senju. Sora took the first 2 steps and walked to Masahiko, then kneeled and bowed his head. Thank you for the sacrifice you made this time. If it wasn't for you, then maybe our clan would have perished there. Masahiko rolled his eye and think, oh, you need more than one apology, kid. The sacrifice I've made was too big. I was planning to maintain my 48-year-old face forever, now I'm stuck with my 53-year-old appearance. My handsome face is gone. Instead, he said, you're welcome, you weren't yourself. Upon hearing Masahiko's words, Sora raised his head and looked at Hashirama. Patriarch, I have made such a huge mistake. I'm willing to let go of my position as an elder, and I will rush to front lines in the future wars. Hashirama shook his head. There won't be more wars in the future. We'll need you in the future. I did what I did with the Kurama clan to show our intention to the other clans. After a while, I will visit each one of them and convince them to build together one peaceful village. Brother, you still have this unrealistic fantasy. Tobirama said lightly. It's not fantasy. I will convince them. Including the Uchiha. I will eventually talk things through with Madara. We share the same dream, after all. Tobirama's expression suddenly changed. He hesitated for a moment, then he shook his head. Big brother, my sword hit Izumi hard. I'm afraid he will die from that wound. Chapter 48, Hiruzen Sarutobi and Danzo Shimura. A month later. The Senjus Fist Training Ground. Sage Art, Lava Release, Raisin Shuriken. The Raisin Shuriken hit its target, but Masahiko didn't turn his head to look. A real man will never look back to see the explosion. In the past month, Masahiko has stabilized his appearance as a 53-year-old guy and finally managed to convince his 3 disciples. Masahiko's life wasn't completely idle, he does some little stuff here and there. The previous event with the Shinigami, grant him 80 points, Masahiko added 28 points to Earth attribute, and finally fused it with fire, creating the lava release. Then he added another 20 points to Yang attribute, which enhanced his physical abilities and increased his chakra. The remaining 32 points are kept by Masahiko for later use, ready to develop the dust release. The breeze blew through Masahiko's face, with someone suddenly appearing next to Masahiko. Second Grandpa, my older brother requests your attendance. Tobirama words got cut off short. Your big brother calls me? Masahiko said as he turned to look at Tobirama. Hey, what happened to the training ground? Masahiko acted like he was innocent. The ground behind him got smoldered from his technique earlier. This kind of power is enough to break Madara's LV2 Susanoo, but now I'm really afraid that he had already awakened his Eternals. I feel like I'm always one step behind, Masahiko said. I'm going to find your brother. Masahiko then turned, leaving the desolate ground to Tobirama. Masahiko arrived at the Senju Assembly Hall. Hashirama was already waiting for him there. Masahiko snorted, then said, Are you preparing to leave, Hashirama? Going alone? He nodded, yes, my visit has already got delayed for a month, and it cannot be delayed anymore. Do you want me to go with you? Masahiko asked. Oh, Hashirama hesitated, I want you to go with me, but this gonna be considered as a statement from the Uzumaki to the other clans. Thus, I will understand if you're willing to refuse my invitation. Masahiko thought about that for a while, and asked, which clan are you going to visit first? The Sarutobi clan. We already cooperated before, it will be smoother to go to them first. The Sarutobi. Masahiko suddenly recalled the time when he met Sasuke Sarutobi 9 years ago. At this time, maybe the third hokage is already born there, Masahiko murmured, then he said, okay, I'll go with you. Masahiko packed his stuff, then Hashirama and Masahiko started their journey with 3 small figures tailing them in the rear. This was the first time for his 3 disciples to leave the Uzumaki village, and now they are reluctant to go back. Thus, they wanted to follow Masahiko. When they arrived at the Sarutobi family, everything was smoother than expected. Because the previous patriarch of the Sarutobi clan has been replaced by the new patriarch, 22 years old, Sasuke Sarutobi. He's called the Hope of the Sarutobi. At the age of 22, he already reached the peak of the Jonin level. If he gets even stronger and reaches the patriarch level, then the Sarutobi will no longer be considered as a medium clan in terms of strength. Sasuke Sarutobi is very respectful toward Masahiko, he even calls him sensei. After he heard Hashirama's proposal, even though he hesitated at first, after he agreed, Sasuke has even offered to help Hashirama to convince the other clans. The atmosphere became calm for a while. Masahiko then smirked, and turned to his 3 disciples saying, come, say hello to your senpai. Then after that, Masahiko introduces his disciples to Sasuke. This is the second disciples, Nanako. He pointed at her. This is the third disciples, Yuriko. Masahiko laughed, then pointed at Kanikiro with a smile, the white dragon horse, Kanikiro. Note, the white dragon horse, a reference from Journey to the West, is ordained as the great strength Bodhisattva of the 8 heavenly sections and dragon horse of the 8 heavenly sections. The Monkey King, Tripitaka, Pigsy, Sandy, and the White Dragon Horse have finally gathered up. Note, the Monkey King, Tripitaka, Pigsy, Sandy, and the White Dragon Horse are the main characters of the novel Journey to the West. Our team is finally assembled, we can start our journey to the west to spread the sutra. Yuriko and Kanikiro looked at each other, and Nanako rolled his eyes and let out a sigh. Then she said, "Suzuki-senpai, don't mind what teacher said, he's getting older." Suzuki then burst into laughter. Then he became more serious and asked, "Sensei, can I teach others the technique you gave me 9 years ago?" "Teach it?" Although Masahiko didn't rely on the Raise-non anymore, he didn't want anyone to pass on Naruto's signature ninjutsu to future generations. "My son, Hiruzen," Suzuki said while smiling, "he's just 4 years old. I've checked his chakra attribute, and he has all the 5 of them by nature. He will definitely surpass me and become a great ninja. The third hokage is 4 years old now, there are still 5 years remaining until the establishment of Konoha." Masahiko kept thinking and got lost in his thoughts, while Suzuki waited for his answer. He noticed that and answered quickly, "Ah, yes, yes." Masahiko kept saying that until the disappointment on Suzuki's face got wiped out. Things returned clear and calm, and Hashirama explained his idea of the village to Suzuki. Hashirama envisioned a beautiful future ahead. Although Suzuki is not an idealist like Hashirama, he believed in the latter's power, and said, "Patriarch Hashirama, I will help you convince my allies to join your cause, the Shimura family won't have a problem with this. And the others will most likely agree. Because for small clans like us surviving in this warring states period is the most important thing, and joining hands with you will grant them that wish." Suzuki then looked at Masahiko, "Now, the patriarch of the Shimura, Ken will definitely agree." Masahiko thought to himself, "Shimura Ken, will also have a son at the same age as Hiruzen." Suzuki got surprised, "How did you know?" "Yes, he has a son, his name is Danzo Shimura. But his talent is not as remarkable as my son, he only has wind attribute." Suzuki said this with a proud expression. Masahiko sighed, "Your 2 sons will become one of the most influential figures in the world." Suzuki looked joyful, "I hope so, sensei." After that, Suzuki and Hashirama discussed their next step, while Masahiko and his disciples are waiting on the side, listened boringly. At the end of the discussion, Masahiko said, "Hashirama, I will take my disciples back to the Uzumaki, I can't join you for the rest." Masahiko didn't want to join Hashirama any further because there's basically no witness points to get from this, and there was some urgency in Masahiko's heart. Now that Madara has awakened his Eternals, he's afraid that he has to face him again sometimes in the future. With his current strength, Madara will mop the floor with Masahiko. He wants to quickly get back home and train. There are still 5 years left until the establishment of Konoha, he will at least need 4 years of preparation for the next battle. When Hashirama heard that Masahiko is going to leave, he got stunned. At first, Masahiko looked so excited. He didn't expect Masahiko to leave this quickly. "Second grandpa, your body," Hashirama thought for a moment. Masahiko rolled his eyes, "My body is okay, don't worry. And besides, I am still the great elder of the Uzumaki. There are many things in the clan that I have to deal with." Hashirama didn't believe what Masahiko has said, but he didn't stop him. "Sensei, I hope that the next time I see you, it will be in our common village," Suzuki said. Masahiko nodded, then turned away with his 3 disciples who didn't look happy to go back so early. For the 4-year-old Hiruzen, Masahiko didn't bother to see him, because after 5 years he will see him every day. Chapter 49, The Hachiman Tonkao. 3 years later. Name, Uzumaki Masahiko. Age, 21 years old, Ninjutsu, 632, plus, Physical, 824, plus, Chakra, 4543, plus 10, Transformable, 3 Body Technique, LV10, 100,000, Max Level, Shurikenjutsu, LV10, 100,000, Max Level, Earth Attributes, Doton, LV6, 436,598, plus, Fusible, Wind Attributes, Futon, LV6, 497,738, plus, Fusible, Fire Attributes, Katon, LV6, 462,243, plus, fusible, water attributes, Sudan, LV2, 10,000, plus, lightning attributes, Raiden, LV5, 200,007, plus, sealing technique, Fuinjutsu, LV6, 413,228, plus, Yang attribute, LV5, 400,000, plus, Yin attribute, LV6, 510,000, plus, special talent, Mind Eye of Kagura Mining, LV6, 10,030, Smithing, LV8, 40,059, rank, S witness points, 32 points. Masahiko looked at his status bar and sighed slightly. So to say, during these past 3 years, Masahiko has been working hard to improve himself, and the result is indeed quite significant. And he also saved 30 witness points. However, his rank is still S. Which means that there's no qualitative breakthrough happening. Thus his skill is still limited like before. In terms of age, when he reaches 20 years old, it can only be increased, and even with aging, it doesn't decrease like before. It seems that Masahiko's dream to be 18 years old forever will just stay as a dream. 32 witness points. Too few, even if I use all of it, there won't be many breakthroughs happening. He muttered to himself. He didn't even get the point out of any events in these 3 years. It seems that there isn't a lot of events happening in Warring States period after all. Hashirama basically has persuaded all of the clans, except the Uchiha clan. The Senju and Uchiha had several skirmishes. Madara didn't make a move yet. It's estimated that he's still adapting to his new Eternals. As a result, the Uchiha, who once were on the same level as the Senju, start to losing ground, and the once proud Uchiha tribes surrounded the Senju one after another. It seems the final battle is coming near, but my strength. Arg, I'm the failure of the Uzumaki. Masahiko sighed and shook his head. Sensei, we are here. Far away, Kanikiro shouted, followed by Yuriko. Masahiko only has 2 disciples now. Nanako, of course, she got married last year. Now she's about to become a mother. Her husband is none other than the guy who scored the most push-ups on Masahiko's apprentice test, Uzumaki Gensuke. Sensei, we just come from Sister Nanako's house. She asked me to give you her greeting, Yuriko said. Masahiko nodded, then said, is there anything else? Yuriko glanced at Kanikiro, and latter shouted, Sensei, let's have another spar. I've developed a new technique. Masahiko felt helpless. In these past 3 years, each time Kanikiro makes a little progress, he would come to Masahiko to learn. Okay, come on, let's see your new technique, Masahiko replied. Oh, here I go, Sensei. Kanikiro shouted, 8 gate release. First gate open, the gate of birth. Kai. The violent energy rushed into Kanikiro's body, and the air burst out. Shit. Masahiko got caught by surprise. Kanikiro managed to land a punch right in the center of Masahiko's body. He tried to block, but still, he was sent flying. Sensei. Yuriko quickly run to Masahiko's aid. Are you okay? Kanikiro wiped his forehead from sweat. Phew, I didn't expect my new trick to be this good. He closed the gate, then rushed toward his sensei. It's good, of course, it can't get any better. Masahiko laughed while replying. At the same time a sentence appeared in front of Masahiko, witness, and change the side story of Naruto World, Hachiman Tonkao, 8 gates, witness points obtained 10, *2. Small changes, huh? It seems the Hachiman Tonkao was invented by Kanikiro after all, but now it got developed earlier. His physical talent sure is outrageous. I should have known it. The Senju had the Hachiman Tonkao in their scrolls technique in the original, not because they were the ones who developed it, but instead because they were close to the clan that did it. With his talent and perseverance, I believe in his 20s he will reach the patriarchal level strength, and it wouldn't be surprising if he becomes the patriarch himself. He's the grandson of the former second elder Masao after all. Masahiko kept thinking, and suddenly he heard Yuriko's voice next to him. Kanikiro, look to what you have done. Sensei is an old man. You shouldn't punch him hard, you baka, you're really a baka. Masahiko felt embarrassed while Yuriko was scolding Kanikiro. Sensei, sensei. Are you okay? I'm okay, Kanikiro, you will become my sensei in the future. Masahiko stood up and said hurriedly. It's over, Yuriko, I think sensei has hit his head, Kanikiro said. After half an hour of explaining, his disciples finally understood, after a lot of explanations that made Masahiko wipe the sweat on his forehead in the end. "Kanikiro, how many gates you can open?" Masahiko asked. 6 gates. Kanikiro replied happily. Masahiko thought for a moment, considering the physical comparison, I should be able to open the 7th gate, the last gate, might be possible, but I don't want to die. This technique can hurt the body of the user and must be categorized as a forbidden technique. You can't teach it to other people carelessly. Well, even the 2 of us will need to train more to use it. But you cannot open the 8th gate, it will burn your entire life force, and you will certainly die, unless you have a Naruto on your side, but still it's not worth it. What? Kanikiro thought for a moment, then said, well, I know about the pain, I tried to open the 5 gate, and I felt unbearable pain. Masahiko suddenly felt scared, and thought, geez, it's just the 5th gate, what if I opened the 7th gate? Maybe I should only open the 5th. Teacher, you and Kanikiro will practice this, then what should I do? Yuriko asked. Oh, Masahiko hesitated. The 14-years-old Yuriko already learned all of Masahiko wind and fire ninjutsu, there's nothing else that Masahiko can teach her. Yuriko, you are not suitable to learn physical techniques and I already teach all of my fire and wind jutsu to you. I can try to teach you to combine it. Masahiko said this, he somehow felt unconfident. It's impossible to teach someone a Kekii Genkai without the right bloodline. Teacher, did you forgot? I already learned how to use earth release, not long ago. Yuriko said angrily. Masahiko's face became stiff. Hi, is it? I don't remember. Yuriko's face is getting more cutely angry. Masahiko hurriedly comforted her, saying, well, I'm sorry, it's my bad. I'll teach you the earth release, I'll teach you. Man, you're getting more like Nanako. In the following 6 months, Masahiko immersed himself with his disciples in training. Half a year later. Then, Hachiman Tonkao, 7th gate, Kai. A shout from Masahiko echoed on the training ground. Ouch off. Oh god, it's very painful. Chapter 50, School Knowledge Shouldn't Be Forgotten. After Masahiko managed to open the 7 of the 8 gates, he stopped practicing. I managed to open the 7th gate, now I should be able to stand a chance against Madara and Hashirama. The mighty Uzumaki hero is back. Masahiko muttered to himself. But it's still too painful. Masahiko clenched his teeth, he's not as strong as the thick eyebrow duo yet. Hachiman can be used without any attribute. But before that, I got 20 additional witness points to distribute. It's surely enough to develop the dust release. Earth attribute, Doton, LV7, 606,598, plus, fusible 1/3, wind attribute, Futon, LV6, 607,738, plus, fusible 1/3, fire attribute, Katon, LV6, 602,243, plus, fusible 1/3. 42 witness points were used. Masahiko looked at his earth, wind, and fire attributes, and nodded with satisfaction. Level 7 can really combine 3 attributes, ha ha ha, here I come. Masahiko couldn't wait to combine the 3 attributes together. Fuuzion. The 3 attributes started to connect to each other, forming a triangle, 3 lines appeared, combining the 3 releases together. The wind connected to the fire, fire to the earth, and earth to wind. Note, a reference from Dragon Ball. Dust attribute, Jinten, LV7, 181-6579, plus. This is it. Masahiko let out a sigh of relief, he finally got the dust jutsu, but it seems that something is still missing. Masahiko didn't overthink, he quickly went to the forest outside the village to test his new ninjutsu. As for why not go to the training ground, this is the Uzumaki's training ground, not the Senjus. First, he sensed the surrounding with his mind's eye of Kagura but didn't feel any people nearby, thus, he immediately used a hand sign, Jinten detachment of the primitive world. A conically shaped light appears from Masahiko's hands, then it swept like an arc in front of him, destroying all of the trees in front of him, and created a vast crater in the distance. This power, Masahiko was speechless. It's not that strong in terms of destructive power, it's the same as my Raisen Shuriken. Masahiko felt confused and scratched his head. But upon clearly inspecting the damage, he saw that while Raisin Shuriken is more explosive, the dust release will disintegrate anything it touches. Masahiko nodded and finally felt satisfied. So, let's try another trick. If I'm not wrong, I should be able to. Masahiko looked around and felt that he could manipulate the dust particles in the air, which he could only achieve when the earth release reached LV7. Masahiko manipulated the dust freely, then he moved it under his feet. Slowly his body got lifted until he finally was floating. Nice. Now I can fly. Masahiko smiled and floated in the air. Let's try another trick. Masahiko shouted, Jinten detachment of the primitive world. A light white emitted in his palms, but it quickly dissipated. Masahiko has almost lost his balance and fell from the air. I can't use the enhanced version? Well, I'm not gonna lose to that imp then. Sage mode, start. Masahiko transformed to Sage mode, and shouted again, Sage art, Jinten detachment of the primitive world. This time the white light object in Masahiko's hands finally fired out. Before Masahiko's eyes, there was nothing but white light, he didn't even hear an explosion sound. After a moment, the white light got dissipated entirely. Now there was only one colossal pit left in front of Masahiko. No trees, no grass, only a vast pit. The forest, it's disappeared? Amazing! Masahiko didn't even think about the power of this technique. All that concerned him at that moment is how he was gonna beg Hashirama later to rebuild this forest for the Uzumaki clan. After thinking about it, Masahiko finally reacted to what his technique has actually done. Almost half of my chakra is consumed, which is 3 times more expensive than using one Raisin Shuriken, but the destructive power is probably 30 times more powerful. Masahiko feels ecstatic. After 66 years of living in this world, now he finally has his own final killing technique. Even Madara's complete Susanoo will be seriously damaged by this technique. This technique is even stronger than the Hashiramas during the Mine War. Masahiko thought for a moment, then he suddenly sensed a group chakras approaching the place, led by the Uzumaki Patriarch. Let's lift the dust release first, then restore my chakram, Masahiko muttered. Remove, separate, disassemble. Why is there no separate symbol behind the dust release? Masahiko examined it for a while. The 3 attributes are still firmly connected, and there's no method to separate them. Doton Earth Pillar. Masahiko weaved a hand sign, then a sharp pillar from the ground emerged. At that moment, he felt a little bit relieved. How about this? Come out, my little fireball. Little fireball? Lava release, chakram mode? After repeated trials, Masahiko found that the Kekii Genkai from these 3 elements were unusable. After all, the lines were connecting the attributes from end to end, and there was no way to fuse them. Oh, no! My little fireballs, my Shakuton and lava technique. They can never be used again. Why does this damned dust release doesn't want to be removed? Masahiko shouted in his heart. A tall, middle-aged man with glasses suddenly appeared in Masahiko's mind. The triangle is the most stable structure, he said while lifting one of his fingers. That was Masahiko's high school math teacher, and this memory was from more than 70 years ago. Triangle is the most stable structure? Masahiko muttered to himself, then he grinned bitterly. This system is trying to teach me that my high school knowledge shouldn't be forgotten. Forget it, I can still use the dust release, and those Kekii Genkai are also not that strong. Masahiko tried to be optimistic. But soon, his face got pale again, because someone came to inform him that the Uzumaki Patriarch is looking for him. Is it because of the forest? Oh man, did he saw me flying from there? When he came to the Patriarch's hall, he saw that his nephew's face looked normal, so he felt relieved. Uncle, what kind of ninjutsu is that? What a powerful ninjutsu! The Patriarch said. Masahiko froze. Ah? Ninjutsu? What ninjutsu? Uncle, don't try to deny it. If you weren't the one who has caused it, you would have been the first person to go there, but you didn't, which means it's you. Some of the clansmen laughed. The expression on Masahiko's face changed. He didn't expect that there was such a flaw in his plan. Masahiko was about to explain, but the Patriarch then said, "It's okay, I'm not mad, you have developed a powerful ninjutsu. I'm so happy for you. We're in troubled times, if the forest is gone, then it's gone. We can't do anything about it. Troubles times? Masahiko forgot about explaining, and asked in confusion. Recently Madara appeared again. Whenever he and Hashirama fight, their battle destroyed the surrounding for miles away, they are evenly matched. I sent people to investigate it, and it didn't seem like it could be done by humans. Now everyone calls them the gods of shinobis. The patriarch explained. Masahiko felt ecstasy at that moment. Madara has finally appeared again? The final battle is drawing near. Konoha is finally coming.